a work plan of how we are going to, what we know about the village drainage, what we're gonna do about it. On the top, you'll see a work plan, and there is like supplemental data, in the bottom of this.
I believe I'm back here. Isn't Mike going to join us?
Oh, yes, I
Is he
think,
here?
I thought it might have been
Yeah.
still before.
I thought he was
No,
coming.
he's gonna be here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, data going on. So what we did, what the HRC did, in April, we did the PASER ratings for the village. So what we did, we put another couple staff members in the car to do a ride along. And so while we were evaluating the road conditions, they were also looking at the road right-of-way drainage. And so what we did is, our GIS department built an app, and there were 7 categories, that we were looking for: buried culverts. It is on the second page, is pretty much, third page is the analysis. So we were looking at, for buried culverts, standing water, vegetation and ditches, swales, areas with no ditches, areas with further investigation, and then we had one with just ditches, just for documentation purposes. So what we found in this wonderful study that we did, and this is just like to give us kind of an indication of where to start without going through every ditch, starting at the bottom, working our way up. So we found that we knew there was like 10 locations that had buried culverts that,
Nancy, what page are you on? I wanna follow along.
okay,
This thing right
on
here.
the memo.
Oh, the email, the letter.
memo,
Okay,
yes.
got it. Thank you.
So I'll come back to the work plan, because the work plan is just a recap of
Okay.
pretty much.
I'm traveling with you now.
Yeah, sorry. So what we found, about 10 locations. Remember, this is not gonna be all the situations, but this is the best we can get while we're in the car without walking and saying, oh, here's that, here's that. So it's a pretty good indication of what the village has. So we found 10 spots that we have buried culverts that we need to clean out and evaluate those culverts.
Are these culverts that are under driveways or
Just
or roads?
roadway only.
Roadway only, okay,
Yes, no dry culverts.
okay.
We have 75 locations that have found standing water, which is really interesting because our ride-along was done 5 days after the rain, right? So that's where we're gonna end up starting.
Good.
Vegetation in ditches are just, overgrown, so the water's not draining.
106.
Pardon?
106 instances or 106
106
properties?
More so instances, so it could be one property, it could be,
With multiple
2
instances?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
I mean, it's not an exact science.
Yeah, it's okay.
We found 307 locations that have a swale, which may, we have ditches, your roads have ditches. So what we're calling a swale is just a little
Oh, my.
lump, a foot deep, or you barely see it, it's just lower than the road, as opposed to a ditch with, a couple feet deep.
Okay.
So we have 307 locations of those. We found 785 locations where there is no ditch at all.
And you think there's a need for one in those seven?
Well, that is part of the work plan.
Okay,
Yeah, we can't tell with actually getting eyes on them. Some of them, if it's the top of the hill, we could just get a swale would be adequate.
okay,
If they're the bottom of a drainage pattern, bottom of a hill, well, we're gonna need a ditch.
okay.
So so we need to really get eyes on that. And
Okay.
that's gonna be part of what we've identified in the work plan.
Welcome back.
3 locations that just didn't fit into any of the categories we need to look at, and then our staff noted the areas with ditches just for documentation purposes. So, and then these are the locations on these following pages. They're color coordinated. You can see all the dots. So if you're wanting to know where those 10, 307, 785 locations are, they're just village general vicinities. What we want to do, we've developed a work plan, as Roger indicated, because he really wants to make sure that you guys look at all the drainage. So the cover sheets are our work plan. We've broken it down to an investigation, evaluate, evaluation, recommendation, design, and then action. So our and our investigation, you guys already were doing the cleaning, CCTVing. We have our sheets that we documented during the ride-along. So next we're gonna wanna move into the evaluation and recommendation stage. The first one is, we can talk about, or you guys considered, policy development on how to develop a living policy documenting practices, priorities, solutions for the residents to understand how the village will continue to address drainage in a comprehensive manner. You know, it's like, what do I do here? What do we do here? Any new construction should have dry culverts with ditches in there. Culvert inventory, that's just gonna be ongoing. You know, every time we have not walked at the whole village and to identify every single culvert, so between our ride-alongs, the pipe tech work, and the paving projects that we did several years ago, we generated a culvert map, which is in the back, the last three sheets. It shows where the culverts are. And then the second to last was culvert inventory. We were trying to list all the culverts and their condition when they were cleaned. There was a few replaced last year. They've been noted on that too. So this is gonna be a living and breathing document. So anytime we do anything work on a culvert, we'll update that, or if you guys do it, whether we give you guys the spreadsheet or we do it, we can just continually update it so you guys have current information.
All right, I have a question, but I
Yes,
can't
ma'am.
hold it in, because I can't. One of the things when Eddie was here, we were talking about this, some people know of culverts on their properties that might just make it easier. Like, I have a culvert on my property that's not listed here. And I had told him about it, and we thought we were gonna post something and ask people to give their information. If you have a culvert that you know of on your property, let us know. I don't think that was ever done.
I don't think so either, and that was one of our items on our work plan, is to take any time a resident gives us that information, is to put it on the sheet and then create action items. So we
Yep.
can,
Which task is that?
I should have printed this bigger. So we have like investigation 1.2, drainage issues, log resident, village submitted
Okay.
drainage issues,
Okay.
living spreadsheet and web-based submittal form.
Got it. I think Kathy's right. I think there's several places. But that doesn't mean you guys should go around, drive around again. It just means residents can weigh in and make this more accurate. Okay,
We could set up a Google Doc that comes to you guys and comes right to us, and,
yeah.
you know, they can see here, this is what it is, drainage issues, they could probably even upload photos real easy.
Mhm.
I'm sure my GIS, group can make an app for that. They can make an app for anything, they're pretty amazing.
Cool. $521,000 and we're done.
I'm sorry?
$521,000 and we're done, at least with what we've identified.
Well,
Bottom line.
it's solely for budgetary purposes, right? Some of this we don't know, right? The action items, we have placeholders in here. Once we get into, you know, some of the culverts, we just put a number in there for budgetary
Okay.
purposes.
Okay,
Some of the culverts might be good and may not be replaced, some of them might need to be replaced. So and ditching, you know, we have $100,000 in there for ditching, but as you know, as soon as you start ditching, we recommend some kind of public engagement, because as soon as you start ditching, some residents may not be very happy with
Right.
having a ditch in front of their home. Like, now I have water in my ditch, now I can't mow it, now, you know, my kids just drive off the road into the ditch. So there's gonna be pros and cons for ditches,
gotcha,
or in the residents'
Pay
eyes.
to put in a culvert.
okay.
And you'll be able to give us, a priority as to which ditches are most important.
Well, that's part of the evaluation recommendation, so what we wanna do is divide the village up into like drainage areas, and start at the bottom and work up, because without an approved outlet, an outlet that can handle it, we might, if we start at the top,
Yeah.
we
flood
just,
somebody in the middle, yeah.
right,
right.
so we wanna start at the bottom and look at the whole district.
Yep.
Mhm.
Roger, in terms of money, we've spent 400,000 already?
200.
200. So we still have 200 in that original chunk,
Remember that we got a $200,000 allocation from Michigan.
right?
That was separate and apart from what we got from the feds. The feds was just under 400,000.
Okay,
And we still have most of that.
okay,
We'll get you an accounting of that, but we've eaten some of it.
okay,
But as Nancy was talking about this, this is a work plan that gives us a framework within which to proceed.
Right.
And
Okay.
available dollars and time will adjust how much we do of this. And there'll be times when we get to one spot here and we'll say, you know, we would be better off at this point moving over here and focusing on
Right.
this.
okay.
But the idea that I expressed to them is that we have not had what would be a good document to chase ourselves in this effort. We set out to do this village-wide, and we need to have a document that shows what we're doing and where. You need to see it, I need to see it, but we also need to be able to share it with the community.
So it looks like right now, this is a 2-year plan. Who knows once you get into
Well,
it?
I think essentially, start to finish, it's gonna be more than that, because
Mhm.
once, we're talking about establishing ditches throughout the village, and there's a lot of areas that don't. And we have to be smart about that, because we don't want your residents very angry at you, so we have to be just very cognizant, try to, a lot of education of why we need the ditches.
You work in many communities, and I think this is butting up against the policy development item here. But it seems to me that ditches could also be culverts. And,
They could be, enclosed storm sewer, yes, and on the
Well-
last, on the second page, sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you.
Someone wants to pay for it.
On the second
Well-
page is like an ordinance, like if somebody wants to
Yeah.
enclose their ditch, they certainly can, but it needs to be designed by, they can hire an engineer, but somebody who understands the hydraulics. Because it could very well, like, Carroll Street's a 30-inch pipe, somebody at the bottom of the hill might need a 40-inch pipe to really handle the whole tributary area.
right.
So with ditches, you drive culverts go in, they can enclose their ditch, but then it has to have thought and engineering behind it, because the surface water does have to go in, and it has to accommodate the upstream area that's gonna flow through that ditch.
My bias is that until I moved to Michigan, I was not familiar with ditches. But I lived in the city, and I think farm areas often had ditches, but I see ditches in the village, and I'm thinking, why do we have ditches? We should have pipes. And so this is an opportunity for me just to ask about why we have ditches when what's the advantage of a
Cost.
ditch over
Strictly cost.
Cost maintenance.
And maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, maintenance, if it ruptures, you gotta go underground and into it, and cost of the
Yeah.
installation versus
Yeah.
just cutting a hole once, a swale once, and then the grass grows and
So
that's the
it's
end
a
of it.
cost issue.
Yeah,
So-
and maintenance. yeah.
And if you have ditches that are deep enough, so your ditch is below your base of your road, it's actually better for your roads. Because the worst thing for our roads is all the frost that's in the ground and the water that's in our subbase. If we, with the ditches below our subbase, that water gets out and you have less freeze thaw action. So if you have adequate ditches, it actually lengthens the longevity of your roads.
Okay. Interesting. Still a choice though, isn't it?
It's a choice, and
But at one point in time, there had to have been ditches everywhere in the village.
Well, yeah.
So they've just been filled in over time. Some people filled them in right and put in a culvert. Most just filled it in.
But David, if I may, one of the things we found is that it varied significantly from development to development. And I think there was less emphasis placed on storm drainage in some developments depending on when they were done and who did them. And that's what our evidence shows as we've gone through this, because it really varies from place to place with no particular logic as to why it would vary. the
So
way
in
it
some
is.
places, it always just sheet flowed right onto the road and then just went away that way, as opposed to running it along the road.
Exactly.
That way, I mean,
Okay.
that kind of makes a little more sense, because like, it doesn't seem like 700 some people over time filled in ditches. There could be areas
A
where
lot
it's
of
always
that,
like that.
look how many of the instances are on Franklin Road itself that has drainage. So,
Well, the other point that Nancy was making was that those 700 locations are
That line
places
right
for
there.
which we would have incomplete information. There may be spots around the village where we wind up putting no additional drainage at all because it's sufficient the way it is.
It's working.
What
Yep.
Mother Nature did or what the architect did when they did the yard worked out just fine.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to make sure when we get done with this, that we've not just brushed it off.
Right, yeah,
That we've
and
got a
made
record of
assumptions.
having looked at it and assured that it's what it should be.
And we know we need to protect your infrastructure and your roadway, but we also, agency wants to make sure that we're very cognizant of your positions and the residents' concerns too, because it's gonna be a balance. You're gonna get people for this, and you're gonna get people adamantly against it.
Are you saying that we are gonna be compelled to make a decision to go on to dig ditches or have pipes? Is it possible for a resident to say, I would prefer a culvert, and I'm willing to, or
Sure.
that's one of those policy development questions probably.
They
What
wanna pay for
latitude
it.
are we willing to extend? But your point, your argument is ditches are better because we have an interest in prolonging the life of the roads. So one alternative is for us to say, no, you're gonna have a ditch because we wanna protect the roads longer, right? Is that what you're saying?
I did it on my Ronzi house. HRC reviewed a site plan,
Yeah,
the lawn's right at grade, but there's a culvert that runs from one driveway to the other and goes through.
yeah, so you put a culvert in over there, yeah.
And for
Okay.
driveways, you have to have, you can't have a
Yeah.
ditch in your
Yeah,
driveway.
but
Yeah.
instead of having the ditch in between the two culverts in your
Right.
driveway, you can just connect the culvert all the way through, and then your little your lawn can be flat at
Yeah,
the street.
okay,
But you can't make it flat at the street and not accommodate for where the water
Oh,
is
exactly,
supposed to
yeah.
be.
Water does have to get into the storm system
Yeah.
somehow.
okay,
But we saw lots of examples like you described around the community, and it wasn't, it was not consistent in each development.
yeah, I'm sure. When you looked at this, are you thinking that there's gonna be a lot of work, or any work to upgrade our building codes? Or is there gonna be work there?
I think in terms of our building codes
Mhm.
and what is required of folks at the time that they construct new, there's nothing obvious at the moment that needs to be addressed. One of the things that we do, and you guys required it, is that if we have stormwater considerations on any new development, HRC looks at it
Right, I remember
and
that,
signs off on it.
yeah,
And with them working with us in collaboration on this project, we'll find out if there's something missing, and we'll be back to you.
okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions, or?
It wasn't our intent to take any more time than was necessary to introduce this to you this
Yep,
evening.
yep.
There'll be some follow-up as we go ahead, but we also wanted you to know that we're working on this, and our intent is to come in 2024 well-prepared to take advantage of opportunities to get stuff done.
What, if any, direction are you looking for from council as you proceed with this?
Nothing yet. Take a look at this.
Mm-hmm,
The first two sheets, I think, have a lot of reasonably understood direction with them, and come back to us with questions.
okay,
I think so far, HRC has set the priorities based on need and ease of getting the job done, and it's worked out pretty well.
And we've talked a number of different times in meetings with Nancy and some of the other engineering staff. And we've had some back and forth over what we might do in one area versus the other. But ultimately, we're going to be bringing choices to you to the extent we identify.
so real quick question, just over the years, where have we experienced the most flooding? I mean, obviously in the downtown.
Downtown, yeah.
Downtown.
The northwest area from downtown has been the most problematic.
Okay,
We haven't had that kind of difficulty elsewhere, although there's been some.
okay,
The low spot.
yeah,
Well, you have an extraordinary capacity in that stretch of housing for sheet flows. Stuff that starts high.
Right.
And just goes.
yep, yep,
And part of what we're talking about there is taking some spots where we can interrupt that sheet flow and capture it into tube flows
yeah,
or something like that, so that it doesn't get into the kind of difficulties that we had when we had that super duper
right,
rain.
yeah, okay.
But there's still gonna be times when it's gonna exceed the capacity of the system.
Okay,
It
Cool.
sounds
Thank
like we
you.
may have to have some kind of town hall or something where we educate people.
There'll be an opportunity, I think, probably, Nancy mentioned earlier about starting at the bottom. And what you have are several different drainage areas within the village. And what we would probably suggest, once we get a design for a particular area, is then meeting with that neighborhood, rather than trying to do it village-wide. But have something that they can relate to and talk about and have them understand what it is we're doing and why.
And sadly, or not sadly, there's no one size fits all. Every lot is unique. Some culverts, if they're half buried on top of the hill, they could stay that way. There's not minimal water. So each lot, each situation really needs to be evaluated and recommendations made.
Just picking up on the community meeting idea, I think if I'm not sure that a community-wide meeting's necessary. I like your idea of dealing with this neighborhood by neighborhood. But I do think we need something to let people know that we're going ahead with this project. And what it is, and that it will be done by neighborhood, and neighbors will have met. When we did this agreement with HRC, part of what we'd asked you to do was build in into the contract, some educational materials. And, I don't know if that's been done or not.
Well, it's
But-
alluded to in here. As you look through it, you'll see that
Yeah,
one of the things that they're talking about is having a document that can be shared with the community
yeah,
that talks
$8,000,
about,
$8,000 allocated for,
that talks about what it is we do and why,
yeah,
with respect to storm drainage.
yeah,
The point about each area being so unique begs the question of why we would do something village-wide when we're focusing on individual areas at a time.
and that was my point, is that I agree with that approach. I do think, though, that letting people know that we're making a pretty substantial investment in drains, but we should probably have a council conversation about what those policies ought to be and what we're gonna, because that's gonna shape what we say to residents.
And neighbors talk.
Oh, yeah,
Somebody may talk to
yeah.
this person over
Right.
here, I'm
Yeah.
in the same situation, how come you're not working in my
Yeah,
yard?
Right.
So, right, so if we have that information available, we say we're starting,
yeah.
how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time?
So how fast do we need to move on the policy development
Like the first of the year.
conversation? Pardon?
By the first of the year.
Okay,
We'd like that in place before we get too much going on.
that makes sense to me.
But and on your comment about information for the community, I think that we can build perhaps a series of pieces that are in our newsletter explaining what we're doing. And then talking about, as we get focusing on particular areas, we can do that similarly with pieces that go in the newsletter.
I think that's good.
Okay?
Cool.
Probably the local papers too, but, when we get to that place, yeah. Thanks.
How often does your newsletter come out?
Pardon me?
Weekly.
Oh, weekly, okay, wonderful.
It was pretty effective during the streetscape project. There was something every week, and in some meetings, people tended to pay attention. But that was just concentrated in the downtown too.
Nancy, thank you very much.
Okay, Nancy,
Thank
thanks, good work, appreciate it.
This is really amazing.
We have about a half hour left. We could look at the goals and objective lower cost items, or we could look at the budget performance for last fiscal year. What's your pleasure?
Probably budget performance,
Budget?
if we're prepared to talk about it.
Roger, I'm gonna ask you to kind of walk us through this then,
The
please.
sheet that
So
you
we're
have in
gonna-
front of you
this is what we're
actually
looking at.
has
Okay.
16 pages to it, but it goes through the details for all of the last fiscal year. This takes us through the end of June of 2023. And this, on the first page, Fund 101 General, what you're looking at in that category is revenues. And this indicates, let me make sure I'm being accurate here. No.
Somebody, well, while he's looking at it, can
The-
somebody just clarify what due from and due to mean? So I don't, not familiar with the wording.
Money coming in and money going out.
So due
Due
from
from is
means
coming in.
coming in?
Yeah, if you take a look at the first one where it says due from Bingham Farms, that's money that they have to pay to us.
Okay.
And below that where it says due to major streets, that's money that is owed from the general fund to that account. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm not, this is, not what I expected in there. The revenues generally are in the, starting in the middle of the page where it says Department 001 revenues. The piece above it is revenues that are all over the place. Everything that we get is in that first section. And these are the amounts that came in, whether they're what we estimated or not. So if you go through that first section on revenues, these are the ones, the kind of things that you're most familiar with. Real and personal property taxes, you'll see that our year end was 1.14 million. You go down, there's a number of large items, six-figure items, but not a lot. You have one that's cable TV franchise fees at 106,000. We have our state revenue sharing at almost 340,000. Everything else is five figures or less. But the total of all of that over the course of the year was 1.7 million. And that's all in that box that's in the middle of that front page.
Questions? So we got $1.7 million coming in. Now, how did we spend it?
Then you go to the line that starts just below where it says total Department 01 revenues, 001 revenues. Department 101 is the first expenditure account within the general fund, which is our notable council members. Should I have said noteworthy? At any rate, most of the rest of this is pretty plain for a while, and I'll give you a chance to take a look at it and ask questions rather than my walking through it. But the information should be pretty plain.
Keep going, Roger.
So just as a point of clarification, Roger, so we've got the, I want to just make sure I'm tracking with you on the column headings. So the ending balance, June 30, 22, is last year's performance.
Which, are you looking at the first page?
It's
I'm looking at, I'm on the
starting
first
point
page,
of the
yeah.
fiscal year.
Yeah. This is where we ended up last year,
Yes.
last fiscal year. We budgeted in the in this third column, or in the second column. So we ended up at 1.5 last year, we budgeted 1.7 this year.
Yes.
We, not sure what the third column is. Year-to-date performance is,
Well, this column, the third column is one that we use throughout the year when we're doing monthly reports.
okay,
So it would have numbers that would be showing what was spent in that particular month. And then the column to the far right would show what was spent year-to-date,
Year-to-date,
including
right.
that column.
okay.
So that under general, we had an end balance of $343,000 previous year, and we were able to reduce that to $319,000 actual year-to-date?
That's correct.
Okay. The next page at the top, Fund General. The first item, Economic Main Street Director, showing an end balance of $54,788. And then the year-to-date at $97,3073. Can you help me with that?
I may need some help with it myself.
We didn't have an economic
I
director.
think that's what's reflected here, is that
Okay.
there was a period of
Okay.
time when we weren't spending that money.
That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So we have monies that weren't spent towards that role.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay.
What were the areas that we saw the most expenses? As far as the most unplanned, let me rephrase. For FY 2022, where were the areas where we saw,
So we just finished FY 2023. That's-
okay, so, correct, sorry about that. But the ending in 6/30 of 2022, this is, okay, then I'm confused here as
All
well.
right, so the column that's on the far left,
Left, right,
that was the figure that was the ending of the last fiscal year.
okay,
So that would have been the end of June of 2022. And what we're looking at this year is the end of June 2023. So the stuff on the far right side is the column that's comparable to the one on the far left side.
So
Just
we,
a year's difference.
there's $100,000 difference in the general fund, from 391 in June of '22 to 290 in June of '23. We've saved 100,000.
No.
Is that, am I
because we're
reading that
only
right?
halfway-
No, that you spent
Well, they,
100,000 more than you.
we spent actually, in this particular case, this is a summary.
I mean, we didn't, it looks like our accounting services dropped in half, and the economic director dropped significantly,
Right,
which would explain the $100,000.
yep,
just,
that's correct. These are summaries
Yeah,
of that Fund 101,
Okay.
central expenditures.
okay.
right, these two.
Well, that shows us operating very efficiently, doesn't it?
Well, some of the money's because we didn't have a Main Street Director too, some of that.
Say it again?
We didn't have a Main Street Director either, so that's another drop in the amount that we paid, so that is not gonna continue because
This is
we
what
now have a full-time Main
2022
Street
was.
Director, isn't that?
Well, how did we reduce our
I didn't
accounting
replicate
services
that
so
here,
dramatically?
right,
Was
'cause
that
this is
Cut
what
back
we
on the
thought
number
it
of
would
hours.
be, this is what it was.
Andrea?
These two are just the exact same,
This is a
so we
year past
can't make a
Okay.
judgment.
Are you talking about the contract, the Plant Moran?
Right, you used them a lot more in the beginning because they had to clean up everything, right? And then now we don't need them as much.
We anticipated X
We
Great.
set, we set a plan to minimize the amount of time they were with us.
reconcile.
Now,
Okay.
By the
the
amended
end of the year,
spent last year.
one of the things that we need to do is
know what
prepare
I'm
for the
looking at.
annual audit.
I'm looking for
And
what we,
that's one of the areas
budgeted
where we
compared to
get
the
extra
amended
help
budget
from
for
Plant Moran in pulling
You know
all
what I
that
mean?
stuff together for us.
Right.
So it will be It's actually
Me
gonna
and
show up
Ty
in the
used to
first quarter.
2022 and 2023, I'd rather
current
compare what did we budget
won't
for in
show up in
2023, what did we actually
last
spend on?
Point
But
of
you did it last year, didn't you, too?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't that balance out? You did it last year.
She's got 2 copies, so one is for me.
I'd have to check.
Okay.
So Roger, year-to-date through June 30th, 23. I'm
That's year end.
23,
Yeah.
okay.
So this thing from
So what we don't know
last year, not from our budget.
Right.
is what we've been doing the first 6 months of the current fiscal year.
We have a good idea, and we'll have that for you.
But
early
we don't
December.
have that on this. This is just,
That doesn't
this
show
is
here.
all history, okay. All right.
Things change from year to year on where you put funds. So Roger, what I was confused on is that for 2022, we have one column that is what did we budget, and then we have another, which is the amended budget, which is what did we actually spend. And then for 2023, we don't have that comparison. So we're really just trying to compare 2022 to 2023, but I would like to, what I'm most interested in for our performance for 2023 is what did we budget for, what did we actually spend?
That's here.
From July 1st till now.
So if you look at the second column from the left, look at the top of the line.
2022, 2023 budget.
Yes.
Okay, so what are the dates for that?
That is from July 1, 22 to June 30th of 23.
Okay. And this is the amended budget, what was actually spent?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the far right, or the one immediately next
Let me
to it?
back up a second. I have to correct what I just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
You asked if the amended budget is what we actually spent. No, that's what we actually authorized. What we actually spent is slightly different from that. That's why you have the 2 remaining columns to compare against what was budgeted.
Okay, so which one was our budget?
The second column from the left,
Okay,
And that's the budget for last year,
that's,
but the first
that's-
column is the actual amount that was paid the year before.
that's
correct.
correct.
Okay. So
So
the
we-
really, the second column really compares more to the fourth column.
That's correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
They're just in a funny location,
Yeah.
making it
Right,
easy.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then what was budgeted is column 2, and what was spent is column 4.
That's correct.
Okay. And where were the areas that we saw the biggest discrepancies for what we spent that we didn't budget for?
I'd have to go back and look. I didn't prepare for that question.
Okay.
And I would have to go back and do some work on that. Typically, what's happening though, you remember that the majority of our expenditures are in the top shop. And that's also the areas where we're inclined to get the biggest surprises because there's so many people more there with various programs that we have to pay for as compared to the 4 or 5 people that are in this office.
Yeah.
So, that's where Dan does an excellent job, frankly, of keeping track of all that stuff. And if we have things that need to be adjusted during the year, we'll come in and ask you about that.
Yeah.
So generally, we're looking at about a $300,000 differential. That's been pretty consistent, yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't think this says that. You know, we really need something that says, here's the budget, here's what we spent, here's the variance between those two. And that's not clear on this report.
Right.
Well, when you say you're not exactly sure how, I mean, that's what I'm seeing, a quick review of this shows about a $300,000.
Yeah, and I think you're
And
right.
that's sort of what we've been dealing with.
Yeah, we have several different funds we call, but we have the building fund, we have the general fund, we have we have sewer, with the pressure sewer system, and we have a few others, smaller areas with terms of state money that comes into roads and stuff like that. I have not memorized all of these numbers.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
And
No, I
I'll-
understand.
I'll gladly answer any of those questions and share them with the whole council.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I wanted to do this evening is to get those questions.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess what I'd like to see is, as quick as you can get, is another report that just shows exactly what I said. Here's the amended budget, here's what we spent, and here's the variance.
The other question
Three
I would have too, that we might find value in is, if you remember from the exercise of, the amended budget is, we went through that exercise of, okay, here's where we're actually over what we projected. So we need to amend the budget because it's expenses that we've already paid for. So I would almost be interested in what was the original
Original budget,
proposed, and
yes.
what's the amended, then what's the final.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense to give you what you started with. And that, second column is the amended budget.
Yep.
So you would see the difference between those two,
Right.
and then we can get you the.
Yeah, cause that's what ended up hanging me
Yeah.
up.
Gotcha, okay.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I'm just encouraging you as you look through this, this is a lot of numbers to try to absorb. And if you have particular questions, we will take those and get them back to, if you can send them to us tomorrow, I'll work on those with Susan and we'll get answers to you in the next couple of days.
I think that's a really good idea, because typically, if I think about other times that this group has reviewed the budget, it's the kind of questions about how to, just like David raised, but could be addressed through kind of some narrative analysis. Where are you surprised? What actions were taken to bring the budget in line? What was the impact of that? Where were we surprised? Where did we go over? What was controlled, not controlled by us?
Yeah, I accept that.
That's the kind of stuff
Yeah,
I'm,
just sort of the human narrative, what the hell happened here?
yeah, and as particularly as we're looking at last year, I mean, I can,
Sort of
I've
sums
looked
it
at
up.
this enough, I can kind of see, but, you know, the other category, and this is a report, that can probably be done, but there are some categories that I'm interested in. One is, staffing costs. Another one is economic development. I'd indicated that when I sent you guys a note. So, rather than going through here and picking out numbers and taking a guess that that's the right number, what would be really helpful is, on some of those high-interest areas, where it's
All you
a,
gotta do is give me the words that you're looking for explanations around, and we'll do that.
okay, so I did put that in the email.
Yep.
So you can maybe take that and just, you can add that to the pile.
Okay, I encourage you all to do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. So we have 15 minutes here. We want to take a look at the lower cost items on our goals and objectives sheet.
What we just did sort of relates to the first paragraph there. Develop and maintain a balanced budget.
What does provide enhanced live viewing of the council meetings? We're doing that,
we're doing stream, yeah.
so that's already scratched off. Huh?
Where's the?
Yep.
Council meetings.
Develop improved documentation of resident inquiries. Are we keeping a
So this is
log
something
on that?
that had come up in the last few months.
City?
Something that we've talked about is, I'm sure which, I think Mud Light or Financial Committee or some other ones. Lots of residents call in, and we don't really have like a CRM system.
Right.
Tracking their calls.
Right.
You can go to, any number of companies that as soon as you log in, they see your entire call history, what you've talked about before, how it was answered previously. And right now, the way it was described, yourself, Roger, and the team, they're struggling to do this basically in Excel, right?
Actually, I'm doing it on my desktop.
On your desktop.
My desktop, literally,
Oh,
with,
okay.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
as I talk to folks, and what happened with it. And if I went out and visited somebody's place and they had a concern, I make notes about that, and I hang on to them. But I haven't sat down personally and put together a report of each of those things, because most of these are 5 and 10-minute items in the total scheme of things, and they're the routine. We get some stuff, like we did with Mr. Wenger, that's much more elaborate in terms of the amount of time and effort that it takes, and if somebody's concerned about it and they want resolution that we're not able to provide, so.
So on this item too, what I'm interested in talking with council about is an IT solution. You know, as calls happen, so we usually get residents approaching the stand that are complaining because they just not felt they'd been heard. And between yourself and the rest of the staff, I'd be interested in looking for an IT solution, tracking all these interactions, seeing that history. That allows us as council members to better scope when we get approached. So we have an idea of what already has been said, and how we can respond better. So I'm interested in number 2 is in like IT solution of that.
Yeah.
I am too, and in particular to long-running issues with the same villagers. You know, I get the fact that you're inundated with day-to-day, somebody saw a deer in distress or whatever, but that we've got situations that we're all aware of residents who have had ongoing strife in the community, and there needs to be a good record of that for all kinds of reasons, not the least of which is just improvement.
Yeah, I was gonna say, really with the developments like the CRM in combination with even free versions of, AI that's out there, you can summarize really lengthy transcripts or anything that we needed from a record standpoint.
And thank you. Just to be clear, when I talk about CRM, it's like a customer relationship manager.
Yeah.
Like it's a software program. When you get a phone call, when you Comcast calls you, you call a Comcast, they know all the deals they worked out for you before, they know your whole history when you dropped and you added, that kind of system. I'm interested in being on the, an action item for us from the financial point of view.
Are you talking about a specific individual that
No,
was?
no, no.
You're talking about
A software
software system
program.
that
Roger,
anyone
that
in
Dana-
the office can,
Yeah,
Input.
it's the backbone of our relationship with our residents, that when you call in, A, your voice has been heard, there's a data entry into it, and this was discussed, this was resolved, and then people, the issues we were talking about, well, we've had 95 phone calls from this one person this year.
Right.
They're really cropped it.
is this an expensive software?
Customer relationship, CRMs are,
It can vary.
normal in
Yeah.
most businesses, so.
But
We do some
In
investigation.
government though, is there a specific government CRM system that we could integrate?
I think there are several out there that we should look at and evaluate against what we think we need
So
here.
who
Yeah.
wants to?
We don't need Salesforce.
Can we ask
No, no,
around
no.
other
We-
communities
you know, but we
and
need-
see what
but we
other
can use
communities
something
are
else.
using?
Right.
I'm sorry?
Other communities might be using things
Well,
already. we could
Birmingham
find out.
does.
Angelina
Yeah.
has a comment.
Right.
Yeah.
I just know that you guys just procured Microsoft 365. There's a platform with Microsoft 365 called Microsoft List, which could be used as a CRM system. And you can, don't you guys have 365?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cloud-based. It would be the same IT security
But you said Microsoft Let?
List.
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 And it's essentially an easier version of Excel, but it does, if you create a register on there, it will do everything you did. Well, if you click the person's name, it can pull up every time they called. If you click the topic, it'll pull up everyone else who called on the topic. Date, you can assign it to people. You can process it through certifications, like I tasked this person with this by this date. You can run analysis on the back end, how many people are calling during what time of year. All of those back-end statistics and analysis, and it's all integrated with Microsoft Outlook, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Power BI.
So we already have it. Is that what we're saying?
Might need to buy a license.
Yeah, it would be an extension of the current services being
It's
received.
not, it's sitting on the system.
I would like to see that.
So in terms of what we're talking about, action items of priority, I would recommend to Roger then and the staff, look at IT options and make some recommendations recommendation, what you think should be that CRM for the village.
Yeah,
Okay,
It might be Microsoft List, might be other things,
right,
might
I
be
agree,
standalone.
it's what we need,
Something a
we have
little
to
more
define what
focused,
we
yeah.
need.
And so that's a really lower cost item because but basically we have the
We don't know
ability.
if that's the right one, though.
We think?
We don't know that.
We
We
don't.
don't know
I
that.
don't know.
We don't
Okay.
know
I
that.
think we just need to look at.
Okay,
Let's investigate.
so let's leave it on the list.
Let's
Roger,
open up.
it's in your court to come up with some potential
So, the
solutions.
vision, and this came up a couple months ago, is that when residents call us up,
right.
you know, this certainly happens to me, I'm sure it happens to most of the folks on this table, we can say, thank you for calling, I'm gonna contact Roger or Dana or somebody officer or Susan, can you give me the feedback of the last 1 month, 2 months, 6 months of the interactions?
For sure.
And we walk in educated, and we all say the same stories on it.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's
okay,
important.
so we'll leave it on the list. Roger will
Yes.
get back to us. Okay. Next one, kind of broad here, expanding communication using the web. Do we have specific things we're interested in here?
So I think this one was, a couple of different things is using the website, having an integrated calendar where I know that, a bunch of the associations in the community work to create like a unified calendar of events. If we could bring that onto the village's website, that gives kind of a one-stop shop so people aren't hunting around for the different websites, to see what's happening within the village.
That would be relatively easy because not Teresa,
Yeah,
blanking
Teresa.
on her
Susan?
name, at the library. Florence is the one who's in charge of the community calendar. So Florence has taken on that role. She collects from all the different community groups, all the information all the different activities that are going on and has created a calendar. I think it's a Google-based calendar. So it shouldn't be too hard because she's familiar with how it works. So I don't know how to do it, but she could do it.
Are we talking about a community directory?
No,
No.
calendar.
No,
Calendar.
it would just be like, here are the
Oh, the
events. within
calendar,
community.
okay. Well, I see community directory, and the FCA typically puts that out. I don't know, is there one in progress right now, or no? Are we doing a?
So, we haven't done one since 2017. The people who did it have kind of stepped back and said there was too big of a thing. So we have been discussing doing a new one for the bicentennial
Yeah.
sometime within 2024, having one done.
Should we ask Anna Marie, because she always.
She doesn't want anything to do with it.
I know, but,
She's made it very clear.
okay,
Well, how would we, I'm interested from well, it's FCA, so, never mind. Not us.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just
But
gonna ask a
maybe-
question, but it's not
Maybe
our
the
line.
village should play a role in it, and I don't know.
So
Is that,
it's something we could discuss, if that's something that the village wanted to play a role in. I think the FCA would be open to discussing. We had some ideas on how we could do this together, because it just becomes costly and timely, and this might be something to talk about at a later date,
Torn.
though.
About
I'm
what?
torn from a privacy point of view, things have changed in 20 years.
That's what my,
When I moved into the village in 2000, you know, it was nice seeing it, but privacy things have changed,
Yep.
you know.
so that was gonna be my question, which is, again, if we take it on, I would only do so it would be very difficult to do, because my recommendation would be that we have people opt into it.
Yeah,
And getting a substantial response, I don't know how great of a turnout we'd end up getting.
So one of our hopes from the FCA that we had wanted was, we had thought about the idea of us making it 2024, having it be the final time that it would have a lot of information about the village, so it would educate newcomers into the village of all the community aspects, all the things that we have to offer, including government, possible ways for involvement, basically, and giving some history of the village too. So it really educates new people and anyone who wants to know, and it gives them the resources to where to go to get them. But also, we wanted to put the phone numbers, addresses, email addresses, whatever people want us to put in that directory for one more final time. We would put it in this one, but then in the future, if people wanted it to stay updated, we were hoping maybe that the village could control that information on the secure website, so that couldn't get to you know, people who could abuse the information, and people could update their information, so or we would update the information as the village. When somebody moves out, you take their data off. When somebody moves in, you'd contact them and say, would you like your data to be inputted in? And if the village could take on that role, I think that would continue it for perpetuity, whereas the FCA would have its base, will give you the
Yeah.
first piece in
Your-
2024 and then done.
So, thank you, Kathy, you're sharing your FCA thoughts.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that this is in our scope, honestly,
Yeah.
local government, honestly, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the FCA is better positioned to
Yeah.
collect it, because when you're paying dues as part of the process of paying
Right.
your dues, you can have that opt-in there, where for the village, it's very difficult, and it's not as easy as just from a legal standpoint, taking the data and moving it over to a third party, which would be, right, that any consent that you're collecting is on behalf of the FCA.
I just don't see it as our scope, honestly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yes.
It's always been an FCA, project. I just asked Anna if she would reconsider. We'll see. If she doesn't, so, okay. But she, you know, did it for years and she did a pretty good job with it, so.
Okay, so we really, the community calendar is kind of the only thing we came up with in terms of using the web stuff, so, okay. We have about 2 minutes here, so why don't we wrap this up, and if you want to, continue this again next time, we can do that, so. Do a workshop before next meeting in December. Okay, let's, can adjourn for 2 minutes, and we'll, be back to start at council meeting at 7. really want to hear me? Okay, let's call this meeting to order, and Dana, will you take the roll, please?
Trustee Gilbert,
Present.
trustee Hanky,
Here?
trustee Early,
Here.
trustee Hanson. Here. President Lamont,
Here.
trustee Saul,
Here.
trustee Salter.
Here,
Thank you. There's an agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to?
motion to approve.
I second.
People can sit, some of those chairs could be moved, so people.
Let's bring some chairs in.
Yeah, there's a
You guys
few
come on
chairs
in.
along the edge there. Yeah,
Sit down.
right. And there's a few up here. You can move back there if you want. Okay,
We're gonna have a big show.
so let's, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I did, I
Did you?
made the motion.
Was there a second?
Yes, there was, I
It
second.
was a second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any comments on the agenda? No comments on the agenda? We're good. All in favor of adopting the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, October 9th, meeting minutes. Any motion to approve?
I'll second.
Any comments about the agenda, or the minutes?
No, they were good.
No comments?
Oh, hold on,
Not for me.
Uh-oh,
I
have to have a comment.
thought it was something that would be good to have in the record, so, give me a second. So, on page 5, old business 10A, we just, all you said was discussion followed. Would anyone be okay with, just if people do look at our minutes to see versus having to watch the meeting, a sentence that said, council discussed rotating the allocation among the 3 each year? Because basically, we just basically said, Birmingham Youth Assistance, you're out, Haven, you're in this year, without really letting Birmingham Youth Assistance kind of know that what we kind of talked about was, since we're not splitting it, and splitting it's a pain, we were just gonna rotate. So just one sentence that we discussed rotating it. Not that we agreed to it, because we didn't agree to it, we just discussed it.
Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
thought we agreed to
Okay.
it. I thought we agreed to
He
rotate
just
it.
wants language in the minutes
Okay,
to reflect that.
but didn't we agree to rotate it?
So I think more just in in an informal sense, we all said, yes, that makes
Okay.
sense, but it wasn't a formal action of the body.
That's why I just said discussion, not that we agreed.
Good point.
Okay.
That was all I had.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes with David's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, public requests and comments. I don't know, it looks like we might have a couple out here. Let's, we're gonna do the 3-minute thing tonight, since it looks like we have a lot of people. So please, limit your, time to 3 minutes. And Rich, you wanna take off?
Yes, thank you, Bill. Rich Parado, Woodside Drive. You have a very busy and full agenda tonight, especially the public hearing on the zoning, but I wanted to suggest something that might expedite that. On the agenda, in business 11F is consider the Extenet Systems application at the very end. There are a number of folks here tonight who are interested in that. First of all, I wanted to thank the council for following the process outlined a while ago and to recommend it to the Plan Commission for review. In the packet tonight, you have the Plan Commission report. They met on October 18th. In that packet, there are 2 items from the McKenna letter. The first is, at its discretion, the village council may also schedule a public hearing before making a decision. And then the recommendation of the Planning Commission, of the 3 recommendations they made. Number 3, the Planning Commission recommends that the village council hold a public hearing prior to acting on this case. The informational session that was held on June 27th, fairly well attended, 40 or 50 people. I believe the council wants to continue to be inclusive for the voices in the community. And I think that it would be, well, what I'd like to request of the council at this point in time, which may save some time later, is if you would take up a motion to agree to have a public hearing per the Plan Commission's recommendation, that the village council hold a public hearing prior to acting on this case.
Thank you.
Can we talk about that?
Well, don't we normally talk about things on the, that are on the agenda at that point? I
At-
thought the
at the-
request was gonna be to move that to item A, so that the folks that were here for that wouldn't have to wait through, but no, we don't normally during public comments
Right.
discuss agenda items. But
But-
if you would rather us move it up to A in new business, so that everybody doesn't have to wait through all of our other items, we could certainly do that.
I'm open to a motion to, I mean, it's reopening a closed agenda item, but if there are a number of people here that are here to talk about the, okay. Are you,
Well, hold on.
are you
Yeah,
okay with
yeah,
moving that
I'm good.
agenda item?
But do we want to do that now, or do we want to? I'm
Nina,
okay
can you
mo-
guide us on this? Okay, so we have a number of people here who want to comment about the item, the second of the last item on the agenda. Because, and normally during public comments, we do not hear comments about agenda items. They are gonna have to sit through the whole meeting. What's the protocol, what can we do to move that agenda item up so that people can discuss the cell issue? We've already closed that agenda
And
item.
respectfully,
Yes,
we have an agenda and an order that we follow.
yeah,
If they want to move from the end of new business to beginning of new business as a courtesy, yes,
Yeah.
we're not restructuring the agendas that we have just because today folks decided to come to a meeting.
I'm just asking a process
I'm
question.
not comfortable with that,
That's fine.
because that's way too, because there's gonna be another one in the future, and then they're gonna say, well, how come we didn't get to discuss it and get it moved up? So let's just move, because that makes good sense, instead of it being F in new business, it becomes A. Our other items are not, old business is gonna take 2 seconds,
Yeah.
we're on a second
I'm
reading
good,
of an
I'm
ordinance,
good, I'm
okay.
good.
Okay,
So,
Is that,
We need a motion to move
so,
move item
item F to
Item-
A.
11F to item
all right,
11A.
I'd like to make a motion to move item new business 11F
F.
to 11A.
Second.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've just changed the agenda and
So
we will,
that means
that
that
will be
you'll
the,
have to hold your comments. You better restate.
if you have a
that.
comment about Extonet, hold it till we get to new business, please. Okay? Any other comments other than Extonet?
Looks like Gringer's back.
That's-
He's gonna-
That's
say
all
it-
the,
Say it again louder.
Yes.
Does everybody in the back hear that?
Is there any other public comments not related to Extonet?
Or agenda items.
yeah, agenda items.
Okay.
you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry. Good evening. Village Council, Angelina Salaka, 26172 Meadow Drive. I would again like to ask the council to instruct the commissioner, or sorry, the administrator, to make copies of the code book for the zoning board. We had a zoning board meeting, Kathy, you were there, it was 2 hours long. Only one person had a copy of the code in front of them. And we're all asked to interpret the code, understand these very complex ideas. And I asked Roger again, he said he didn't have a budget for it. Last time I came here in April, you guys laughed and were like, how can we not make copies? So can the commissioners get copies of the code book that they're expected to interpret and analyze and make decisions on during the meetings? Can we do that for the zoning board?
I use this for the code book. Take your phone and
Okay,
look
but
it up.
Notwithstanding that, is
So
it
we
an
can't
actual
have
book, or we
paper
just talking about
copies?
printing paper?
Of the code?
Is it an actual book that has to be like reproduced and bound, or is it we just talking about copy and
Yeah,
paper?
okay, well, but last time I asked. Okay, do you have money for that, though? Because I was told by Roger that
What are you talking about?
there was no money for it.
That's an issue, I didn't say it was insurmountable, we have to discuss it, but
Can the council make a motion to permit the budget
Sounds
to
like we're
make?
already doing it, Angela.
I don't know, because I haven't,
That's
I've
what-
been a commissioner for 2 years and I
Janet
don't
just
have a
said
code
she
book.
can make the copies.
Well, Dana just said she will.
Right,
Okay,
so it'll be done.
so we can do it?
Right.
Okay, you good with that, Roger?
yes.
Okay.
But I remind you, the most efficient way is to use your, do it
Well,
mechanic.
And then just wanted to get up here and let the council know some of the issues that I've heard from residents who aren't able to come to the meeting and are unable to call in, or because there's no call-in comment service or function. Some of the things that I've heard is more downtown businesses, coffee, sandwich, small grocery shop, friendlier and welcoming community leadership, access to the decision makers and input on decisions, maintenance of the wooden bridge on the south side of 14, just east of Franklin Road, leaf blowing to the street, bagless pickup, a community point of contact for village concerns and issues, how do residents get involved and find out the local village news, is there a farmer's market, what services does the village provide, and what is the millage for? Sorry, that's outdated. I'd also like to say that after the August meeting, when there was a discussion about moving the Pickering barn to Franklin, I held my comments. But then a week later, there was a village-wide block party, and I wanted to see how the Krieger house and the barn were utilized for that, and they weren't even open. The week after that, there was an amazing FCA event with music and tattoo artists and ice cream. And I was like, oh, maybe the Krieger house and the village barn will be used for that, and it wasn't. So I think before the village pursues a very costly investment to move another barn to village property, we should think about how often we're using the two historic properties that we currently have on village grounds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. That's it for, oh, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Denise Calt. I'm at 24596 Riverwood, and I'm here with a few other people that we just wanted to thank the council and everybody that communicated with us over our concerns that I think you know what I'm talking about, and we wanted to just let you know that we appreciate all your efforts that you've made to try and resolve this issue, and we are going to sit back and see how things hopefully develop the way we all hope they do, but we just wanted to come and tell you we greatly appreciate you reading our correspondence and taking, and really trying to put this issue into the right perspective, and hopefully we can all move forward and it'll work out.
Cool.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Any other comments? Going, gone. Okay, we'll close public requests and comments. Village officers and agents, the chief's on vacation. Who's, somebody doing a police report?
You should have
Tony,
received, did you receive one from the chief?
I didn't.
Turnout.
Oh, it's in the book. I'm sorry. Anything other than the book, I guess not. Okay, let's move on to fire. Tony, go ahead.
I could give the police report.
Okay. You're
And who's gonna
multifaceted.
give the fire report?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, because you won't have a police department when I'm done. No,
Okay.
I'm kidding. Wanted to start with a bit of brevity, because I actually have something personally that I wanted to ask, not ask, but advise those who are in attendance as well as those who are watching. In terms of the official report, you have our written report. Medical runs continue to stay high, and we continue to respond to needs. This, though, leads to my personal ask for everyone who watches this, which is we've gone in the last 7 days on 2 runs involving deceased individuals. In one case, this was someone who was very sick. In another case, it was someone who had absolutely no history. We've never run on them before. In both cases, the family had no preparations for what their plan was to do with regard to their loved one. And it really starts with everyone individually. And I mention this because as the person who provides that death notification, the very last thing that I am supposed to do, the very last thing I want to do, because although I know some of these folks, I'm not their family, I'm not their friend, I'm the responder. I should be the last person to be giving advice on what to do for funeral arrangements, or for dealing with property, or dealing with friends, who to contact, but to happen. I'm more than happy to discuss it with anyone. I've done it with my own family. I've done it with my own parents. But I would say this, please take a moment and think about what is part of life, which is death. And think about how you want to be treated when it happens to you. And you should think about how you want your family to react and respond and contact and what plans should take place. Granted, this has probably never been a fire chief's report in the village of Franklin, the state of Michigan, or even the U.S. But I'm doing this with all sincerity because it's so very important for everyone to have their plans the way they want. My firefighters, our police officers, our EMS providers, we are all there to provide service. But at some point, that service does end. And I would really ask that everyone have a plan in place. I've sent emails to the villages, Southfield Township, on several occasions over the years with reference to medical wishes, medical power of attorney, all of those things that no one likes to really discuss. But it's so very important, and I'm asking again, and this time I'm not putting it in writing, I'm saying it live, in front of the crowd, as well as being videotaped for presentation. And I would say, please, talk with your families, talk with your significant others, talk with those that are around you. If you have questions, if I can help, call me. Call anyone that you can have your plans in place for you. So I'm sorry to be so serious about this, but after responding twice in the last 7 days, it is so very, very important that everyone take a moment, just a moment, and consider what your plans are for you. So, pending your questions, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Questions for Tony?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lance, are you here? There you are. Treasurer's report.
Good evening, trustees and president. Please accept my written report in the capacity as the village treasurer. The bills list report for this month totals $733,296.47. The amounts on the bills list are consistent with normal monthly spending, and the expenditures are generally consistent with our budget. The bills list for this month includes a large entry of $14,802.42. It's for the Carroll Street Drain Sewer investigation that was paid to Hebel, Roth, and Clark. The village has sufficient funds to meet its current and anticipated obligations, and the list of account balances in the package is as of November the 1st that we hold at at First Merchant Bank. The balances held in interest-bearing insured CDs held at multi-bank securities are included in the consolidated report. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Submission of current bills. Do we have a motion to approve the bills list?
Motion to approve.
Second? Questions? Everybody's,
I
Happy?
did have, give me
Okay.
1 second.
I know it.
Thank you. Okay. Just for clarification, I think I've asked this question before, but for the sunset maintenance, there was a bill for the PD, which is $220, but then janitorial service for Village, Krieger House, and restrooms is $1,200. Is that $1,200 a month?
Yes.
Okay. And then how many days a week are they coming out to clean?
They come here on Fridays. I believe that they were catching elections like 3 times a week
3 times a week.
during the summer. So it might drop just a little bit now that
Okay.
they're not going up there as much.
All right,
So the
thank-
Krieger's like once a week too.
Okay.
I have a question. Regarding the tree evaluations, that's $1,400 for 2 trees. Is that correct? And do you have any idea why that was so expensive? Was it a detailed evaluation, or?
Was it the evaluation or the removal?
I'll have to go back and look at that.
It says evaluation.
No, I know. I
Yeah.
actually, thank you for bringing that up because I
Yeah.
highlighted it and then I was like, oh, maybe.
So let me go
yeah.
back and I'll go back and look and I'll let you guys know.
Thank you.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Is that
thank,
for, who
It's a tree.
was the vendor?
Save a tree.
it's Save a Tree, so it's our arborist.
but they also are our tree cutter.
If he was so concerned, he would work for nothing.
We did have them look at, particularly the elm tree that's out here that had to be removed. That was quite an extensive evaluation. So I can see where that one might have been pricey, but we'll verify that.
Well,
It-
it's, yeah, I mean, there's
I agree. It's a high number to, you know, it's hard to just the $800 to do an evaluation. If it's an action that they cut it down, would make more sense.
I mean,
So-
it's gonna be $2,500 to take the tree down, plus $800 to evaluate it. It seems like a
Well, the
lot to
question-
me.
The question was whether or not it needed to come down.
Yeah,
And that was the issue that we did not have the capacity to determine ourselves. So I'm just suggesting that that may be the answer, Pam. I'm not telling you.
it's okay, if you just clarify that.
Find out the answer
yeah.
and let us know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the bills list? So all in favor of approving payment of the bills list, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next thing, special reports, president's report. I have nothing specific to talk about. Council, any council reports?
Just very brief, I stopped into Madeline's this morning at 9 o'clock, I was the first customer there. She's opening up at 7 o'clock now, she wants people to know she's in business. She's trying to bring in a lot of sandwiches and food, and really do the kind of thing that everybody's been asking and begging for.
Yep.
So we need to support that. So if you're out there, stop by Madeline's, have some coffee, have something to eat, and she's there till 2 o'clock.
Absolutely. I was there last weekend, and if you haven't been there in a long time,
It's
it's a lot different and
Yeah.
much more relevant than,
Yeah.
so.
Mike, thank you for saying that
Yeah.
too, because I think that's really great we have a platform for our businesses, so using it's important.
Right.
Great.
And the other thing too is just, I'd like to take a moment, to thank all of the veterans. We just went through Veterans Day, so, coming into Monday after last week, again, thank you, everyone in this community, whether it's yourself or somebody in your family who has served, thank you.
Any other council comments, report? Roger, administrator's report?
I don't have any this week.
Okay, planning commission, Stuart?
It's great to see a crowd here today. A lot of concerned villagers. Wish our numbers were the same in our meeting. So just as you've seen on your agenda, we did send forth to the council the Extent systems. We do have 3 provisions that we did recommend a public hearing as one of those provisions that was mentioned earlier in public comments. But also, there is a concern with regards to use of the public right-of-way close to the road and making sure that we have the road commission's approval or at least recommendation with regards to using that space. And then also having having an engineer look over it and see what the effects are having the cell tower or I guess the distributed cell network placed there. In addition, there's several other points that have come up that I'd like to at least ask of the council. One of them, which is we did bring forth a survey for the Pickering Barn. The question that I would ask is, what do we really need to have council approval to send a survey that's not holding any weight or water other than just to find out what the village needs? Because it was removed from your agenda because I don't think you had time for it tonight. But we would like to at least get a pulse from the village, and that's one way we can do it. So I'm not sure if we really need what we need to do that going forward, if it really needs to go through council or.
Well, thank you, sir. Last time we did a survey like that, I think we spent 10 to 15K promoting it, mailing it. It was a lot of money.
We're not mailing anything. We're just emailing it
What's the purpose of the survey?
to get interest, to find out what the interest is of the village.
Can we take a step back? So when we initially referred the Pickering Barn consideration to the planning commission, it was with specific instruction. And so what was that? Like, what was the time frame for bringing a proposal back to?
We were given 90 days and $2,000 to investigate what the feasibility is of moving the Pickering Barn, what would it take to give you a budget, also to gain interest from the village as to what we can, what the interest is of the village to move forward.
I don't recall asking to gain interest from the village at all, honestly.
Maybe.
I recall that we wanted, what location could the barn be placed? I remember that ask.
Okay. So, I mean, this effort doesn't make much sense if we don't know if the village is even interested in it either.
There's also a question like, is this something that we as council want to expend funds on?
The reason that I'm
honestly?
asking about that is because I was initially hesitant to refer it to planning commission, and ultimately was like, I'm fine putting some resources towards gaining more information, but if it's about moving it at the expense of taxpayers, putting it onto village, property where we already see the expenses that we're putting into the Krieger House, I'm gonna oppose it. Now, that's where I guess I just question where we step out. And again, if the Historical Society is interested in it, take the fundraising for it. Like, I just don't know what where are we at in the 90 days and what proposals do we have so far?
So this will be this Wednesday will be the 60 day from when we were actually given permission to be able to actually meet, and so we need to, because we have put a request in for the council to provide, or at least the idea was to have a survey approved. We're being pushed out another 30 days from beyond the next month.
So if I recall, the 90 days wasn't anything that we necessarily specifically put on it. I thought there was something to do that within the 90 days, there was this other competing interest that was trying to get their hands on the barn, so we needed to do some quick vetting out of things to potentially see if there was something that needed to intercept there. And the information that we wanted to know is, what is it gonna cost to move the thing? And what are the possible locations of moving them, and what would those potential uses be? And that's probably really as far as we really need to go right now. Residents' input on an IFCOM, as we've known from the past, does nothing but create, wrinkles and issues to be discussed that we're not ready to discuss. From our understanding of this, if the barn's being moved, it's gotta be broken down board by board.
Yes.
And stored.
Doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to be stored, but it has to be moved, or board by board, yes.
It didn't have to. One of the things they said, they could pick it up and move it. It seemed like the better option to take it apart.
Yes.
Pick it up and move it.
But if we had a location for it already, right, that would be the idea.
Right. So, but I thought that the plan, and if it was being moved to, what was it, Holly? I can't imagine that they're driving it to Holly on a truck.
No, they're taking it
Right.
apart probably.
So
yeah.
if gaining ownership of it means it needs to be broken down and stored, then it seems that that's the most important piece, is what's needed to ascertain the asset.
So we did
What does it
discuss.
cost to ascertain the asset, and if there's a significant cost, where's that money
Because
coming
if we
from?
don't have these answers, what would a survey ask?
So we already asked. We already presented last month how much it would cost to break it down, and then it needs to be stored. Now we don't have the exact number for how much it costs to store per month.
Wait,
I'm sorry, sir.
hold 1 second. I'm getting texts from people saying they can't hear the sound. Can you bump up the sound? I'm sorry.
So our ask was, how much would it cost to move the barn?
Okay.
Where could it be on village-owned property? That was it. Not about a survey. We don't even know if this is, we just spent the last hour and a half talking about the finances of the community and where we're good or bad. So we're not in any position now to start asking the question, yes, we can afford to do this or not. I don't even know if this is the role of us as a village government to be picking up and moving buildings, frankly.
Okay. So if I were to ask for an extension for more time on this, then what would the council's recommendation
What's
be?
the purpose of the extension?
To give us more time to be able to.
You can take as much time as you want. We're not waiting for a specific answer on anything, because we were under the impression that the urgency was because there was a competing interest. If the only time frame we're competing with is however long it can stay there before it's gonna be torn down, that would be something that we would need to know. So that's the outside date that we're working with. But yeah, when you did give us the cost, and it was in the hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, okay, so, at that stage, now knowing that's the case, the second piece that we asked for, the suggested locations.
Yes.
And what could they be done there? And to the extent that they're on private or non-village owned properties, I think before we go much farther with that discussion, some discussion should be had with those property owners to even consider whether it's something we should even be putting out there.
But even if we take a 1,000-step, or take the 1,000-foot view, is like, again, a couple of things. One, I think it's good to have a timeline, an extra 30 days, whatever, but we don't want it to completely occupy the conversation for the planning commission. Like, we have a list of priorities, and part of that timing was to come to a resolution or test out the viability of a resolution quickly. And so my fear is delaying this further is is investing a lot more time into something that we never intended to take up this much time. The other thing too is, at the end of the day, if we know that it's going to cost several, like high hundreds of thousands to up to $1 million to move, right? That is going to take a vote of the people. So we don't need to go out and survey people. We need more information to have a viable solution as policymakers to say, the only outcome that could come of this is, do you support an increase in your taxes to raise $1 million in order to put it at this property?
This is not a
But-
role
but- but-
as
but-
village
but just a
government.
second, before you finish that statement, I understand that from the state, there is potential funding to do this. It
Let
wouldn't
somebody
all
else
be
do it.
on our shoulders.
But this
That's
is-
the point.
this
That's
is-
why it seems possible, only because
But the
we
survey
can
doesn't
get.
matter then. We
I
need the
agree
raw
with you.
numbers to
Right.
actually have a
That's
plan.
Right.
Let me have a couple minutes. here.
What other
Yeah.
numbers do you need? Sorry, just can you
Well,
get?
no, the location, like if we were to make a proposal to the state,
But you just said I couldn't do a location unless we talked to the property owners too. So what, I'm just trying to
I'm
make
talking about a
order of
fleshed out
operations.
idea. What are we asking people in a survey?
And
What would the survey ask?
Would, one of,
So,
you wanna go-
hold on,
go ahead.
hold on. a few minutes. First off, we have to step back. I think you're right, David. What are we trying to accomplish here? Our role as small government, village government, is not to be picking up and moving buildings. It just isn't. There certainly is a need for, historic preservation. That's fantastic. There are community groups that can develop and do this and raise the funding. That's not our role as a village government, to be funding this. It just isn't. We're stepping beyond the scope of what we're supposed to do.
Have you identified potential locations that, in the private sector, that we could encourage that property owner or owners to,
Sure.
I could see a building like this being a big boost to the commercial area. If
Absolutely.
a private owner developed it, and I think it could be a big draw, but without any village expense.
I mean, it's very similar to Main Street Franklin. We have full-time people in our government working on, this area, how to develop our economy. And it's very possible that, or the economic life of the village, it's very, Oakland County has funds to do this. It could be that the move is actually of no cost to the village. And it's a difficult, it's obviously before, the Oakland County Commissioner Marcia Gersonson has called me to indicate they have money to do this. And if we feel, and this is what we're evaluating in Plan Commission, that we have a plan put together, that's where, you need to be thinking down the road as to what the possible uses would be, what the benefit to the village would be. Then we'd be in a position to perhaps make
I
a
think we need to
request.
step back,
from a-
honestly, Peter, Stuart.
Pardon me?
I think we need to take a step back. I don't think this is our role. It just isn't our role to be picking up and moving the barn. I know you guys are passionate about it, but from a plan commission point of view, from a village council
Well,
point of view,
it's a land use issue.
this
and,
is not our business. It's just not.
Yeah.
Put it on the historic society if you want, raise the funds. That's exactly what historic societies do. If you came back and said, hey, this could fit on this, I'm just not interested in doing this, honestly. We already spend $20K, $30K a year maintaining the Krieger House. We've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars maintaining that building. It's never made a dime. We get $2,000 of income, we spend $30,000 on expenses. We're going all the way backwards. So for us to start thinking, we're gonna bring another building into Franklin, park it there, and spend more money. This has become the liability for all future Franklin residents, forever.
It's a
That's right.
feel-good.
You don't take it lightly.
We're preservationists, we love the notion. And if the state of Michigan could help or completely fund it, clearly, there wouldn't be any objection on our If the owner of the parcel of land at 14 Mile and Franklin Road were to say, I'd put it here, and let some developer come along and make it into another restaurant or coffee house,
Right.
this council would be cheering.
But that's private business.
But
Absolutely.
does Oakland,
Yeah,
but does
so,
Oakland
I guess,
County
I mean,
need,
it makes it sound like we shouldn't have Main Street Franklin.
Well, no, that's not at all.
he doesn't.
Well, saying that there's no role for, our government to encourage.
No, this is,
That's-
Pete, I have a
that's what
question
we're
for you.
doing.
Pete, I have a question for
Do
you.
we have a real competitor that's trying to take the property? Last
Well,
I
our
heard,
real, I do believe that Holly Township has an interest in it.
But they're still stuck like.
Well, that he said, we respect Franklin's priority on this, having it stay in the local area where it's historically significant.
Yeah. But if they really
But
want
the real time pressure is the developer.
Yeah.
The approved plans indicate that, it'll be no more than 2 years after plating that he will be receptive to not taking it down. But if he gets a buyer for the lot, and he wants to put a house on it,
Yeah.
he said that it could be by spring.
Well, they just did their landscaping in the last 2 months.
Right, but I
So
don't
they're
know
ways away
foundations.
from
They are. But obviously, the time pressures are big, and it's challenging. In order to put a barn in storage, you better have a good plan for it too, so we're trying to put some thought into that.
my recommendation, first
Can I
off,
make a comment? So just, we're all taking steps back here. As, I think we're reacting to what looked like a lot of scope expansion, Stuart, of the request we made, along with a modest amount of money to the planning commission 60 days ago. What we needed, Pete came to this group with an idea. We didn't have any information. We asked planning commission, our land use experts, to give us some, within that budget and a time frame, give us some, your best opinion about where it could go, what cost issues do we need to be aware of. This group's all about yes or no, spend, not spend.
Yep.
And your thoughts on how this building, what we would do with this building, including, work out someone, right now it's Pete, work out a deal with the people that own that property, or work with Main Street Franklin, which is charged with building the downtown, creating an economic base. We have a partnership with them. And they in turn have access to county, state, and federal money that can help that private enterprise, create something out of this old barn that's sitting right now at risk of being demolished. So we made this really narrow request. I think I'm reacting to, it's not that I don't love what people think, I just don't think we're there yet. And so I'm looking for something within 30 days from now, because I think you can do it. You made a strong start last time. And I think that what I'm looking for is your thoughts on, is the guy gonna, is it reasonable for us to do a deal, or for you, Pete, and whoever's gonna take lead on this, to do a deal with the owners of the office buildings on the corner? If you're thinking of putting it on public property, then where and what would that entail? That's all I wanted from you. 60 days ago, that's it, no more.
What I saw, I read your guys' agenda
Yeah.
and heard your last meeting. You have all that information.
We do.
Yeah,
Give
That's
it to
pretty
us.
much so where we're at right now.
yeah.
Okay.
Not saying the project's, dies there, but that's about as far as we need to go right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next,
Spending
next
time
month
and
I'll,
effort on the survey, which was nice, and to have it never hurts to be able to use it in the future, but the two main items are exactly what Pam just said.
Okay.
So
What's
let's,
it gonna
so we'll
hold
present that to
And
council
if-
for next
if
month.
there are revenues,
Okay.
Oakland County, State of Michigan, Department of Natural
Let's
Resources,
do it.
those will be the thing. Get us the list of that, so that those are things that people could be reaching out to
Okay.
and say, hey, is this a?
Yep.
Pete, I know you're on the board meeting agenda for Main Street Franklin coming up. And I think you can also get a good read on where that property owner is at and what investment they are willing to make in this. And you can give us a picture that will let us say, yeah, we're in, or we think we can't.
Okay,
Yeah.
clear enough?
It's clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Anything
you.
else on,
Thank you,
with
guys.
respect to planning?
Those are the main things. I mean, as part of your agenda for as goals, one of the things that we've looked at in the past are pedestrian sidewalks, and so there is talk on creating a committee, from what I understand, for that. I'd like to make sure we understand what planning's role will be involved in that, and how you'd like us to support that task and activity. As well as from zoning, there was a extensive discussion that came up with regards to the types of surfaces that can be used on properties, such as turf, artificial turf, on properties exterior, and there were concerns with regards to the types and uses and regulations, since we don't currently have any regulation on that material. Since we are all living off well water, and we already had concerns downtown, is that something that council would like us to look into as far as amending our ordinances with regards to using artificial surfaces and the potential runoff concerns that might exist because of that?
Boy,
No.
I would, because I think what happened, so I'm gonna give an example of what happened. My neighbor across the street asked for a significant variance for impermeable surface, going from the 25% up to almost, what is it, 45%? It was an addition, almost doubled. He wanted almost double his amount, and 11% of that was for AstroTurf on the ground. And AstroTurf isn't just AstroTurf. It's not just the laying out of a flat piece of turf. It's digging up, putting in crushed concrete or whatever crushed thing that goes underneath, and then a layer of some kind of something, and then a layer of the fake grass on top, and then there's the crumb fill that's put on top of that, and that crumb fill and that plastic is nano, plastic, and when it gets blown away from blowing your leaves, and it gets rained on, all that nanoplastic from the crumb fill, it breaks down and can get into our water. And so that was, we had multiple people that came and showed up at the zoning board meeting concerned about that, the potential contamination of our water due to that. And my neighbor was kind enough to hear what his neighbors didn't want and said, I will take that 11% away. I will not put AstroTurf down at this point. And then the zoning board was able to then make a decision from that point forward. But what came of that was, even Angelina had asked at the zoning board, do we have a zone? Do we have any kind of regulation on that? No. And then, there were other people who heard about it and have contacted the planning commission.
So, quick question on that. So, as it stands right now, based off of our ordinances, AstroTurf would be considered impermeable surface, right?
Well, it can be permeable or impermeable. It just depends on how it's built.
So he could have gotten it just using a different type of
Underlayment.
construction.
Question.
Just like a brick pavers can be also be considered can be considered permeable or impermeable depending on how they lay them.
so do we want the planning commission to get into AstroTurf regulations?
And realize also the other piece that comes to that is that there's no bugs that can grow in there, so there's no food for birds, there's no home for animals, there's a lot of issues that come from that, and it
So
looks different.
what direction do we give the planning commission? None? Can't get excited about it?
I don't see a compelling need for you guys to spend time on AstroTurf.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's kind of my opinion
Okay,
right now.
that's fine, I just,
Is that, if that's the direction, that's fine. I'll
Yeah,
take it.
if you-
I did not want to take direction on this because it could be I've heard opinions from several different commissioners on this, independently, and I just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
the body is in accordance before I take it on.
very good.
If there is
Thank
more
you for
noise in this area, just could you shoot us
I got one.
a message?
I guess the question I'd like to know more is, we just did this ordinance recently, and we came to a conclusion on the percentage of impermeable surface
Right,
that was
yes.
permitted.
You were a part of that, yeah.
I didn't necessarily agree with the percent we came with, but notwithstanding that, so the question could be is, are we finding out that a lot of people are in what would be, might consider normal things that you would do around your house if you wanted to improve it with additional improvements, are we finding that the percentages that we have are causing a lot of people to have to come for variances, which is what case you would normally look at an ordinance, if 6, 7 people are coming in for variances on the same item all the time, then it wouldn't say, hey, let's look at that item. If it's just a one-off here and there, then that doesn't seem to be an overgrowing concern. But if we find out that the last 6 site plans that were submitted, 5 of them didn't satisfy the impervious surface condition, as with the last one you just looked at on the site plan, we changed the ordinance. They had a site plan that on the prior ordinance was good.
All right.
We changed the ordinance, lowered the amount of impervious surface, then they became non-conforming. They fixed it, but, so, we are already, by having changed the ordinance, creating conditions. If you said it was just one guy that in the last 2 years had to get a variance for impervious surface, I would say it's not a big deal. If 6 people have in the last year, then it would say, let's take a look at that.
I don't think there's,
Sounds like it's
not really
not a big deal.
happening.
Okay.
But at the same time, David, unless you're pulling a building permit and have to do a site plan,
I speak to that.
yeah, you understand where I'm going with that.
Yeah, of
Gotcha.
course, but we can't control what villagers do unpermitted.
Yep.
But
Okay.
in this situation though, I mean, when we're talking about AstroTurf, it's a lot of chemicals and we're all on well water. Is that not something that anyone's concerned about?
I'm concerned about it.
I think there's a concern, but I think the issue is it's such a small percentage of people that even think about that it's just not worth the effort. again,
And
like David
we live
said,
in a green village, and I think one of the virtues that we attest to is having natural green
Yeah.
trees and plants, and I mean there's even campaigns for people to like leave parts of their lawn unmowed and like allow wildflowers to grow. Right, those are the types of things that we're trying to. I don't think it is common for people to be trying to use
Right.
artificial turf
Yep.
as a means to greenify their property.
So let's leave it alone for now.
But
and we'll
when
go
there
from
is, that's the question, is
Well,
that if we have.
That's where the ZBA is involved, and either you get a variance or you don't, and they need to consider the
Thank you, Stuart.
pollution stuff. Thanks. Well, let's move on here. Main Street Franklin, Susan, is there,
Yeah, so I'm just gonna do it from here, so I'm not stepping on people. So thank you, Mark, for doing, Frankenstein, for our Frankenstein Frenzy. That
Don't know
was
who
very
that person was.
successful. It was great. Appreciate it, we all loved it.
It works really well. It's a good fit.
Yeah, it was really cute. Also, sip, shop, and stroll. We originally put in a civic event permit for, December 7th. Due to some scheduling conflicts, we need to change that to December 14th. I just need to know if you guys are good with that. It's a week's difference, so.
anybody have an issue?
Okay.
No issue.
You got it.
We'll move forward with that.
Okay,
So I'm making it quick tonight, that's it.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee on Pathways, is there anything?
I have I will
talk-
update. Dave and I have spoken. We're going to develop a 5-year plan of what this would look like, almost like a charter, just the way we do like with the cell phones and other things, like when do we deal with DE&I, like here's our charter, what our mission is, what our vision is for this kind of things, for this connecting communities. And we're asking for, Stuart had asked about the engagement of the planning commission. We'd like the planning commission, Stuart, to be engaged. You'd asked the question about engagement of the planning commission and yourself. We'd love your engagement in it. I know you have a lot of information about potential pathways. So we're going to meet once a month, 2 weeks after our, alternating with the village council meetings. Monday nights, we'll probably meet at the Krieger House, honestly.
So, sorry, if I could, how would it be all right if we just appoint a commissioner to that group to help attend and be
Perfectly fine.
our representative? Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we've got 2 residents that have expressed interest in working with us, so that makes a nice committee of community and commissions
Great.
chairs to be part of it.
Great,
David?
cool.
If I can just make a suggestion, I think one of the first things you should work on is drafting a form letter to the residents who live in the 6 or 7 designated areas as to what are you gonna say to them? In the first, you're gonna only get one first crack at them. And, cause you gotta basically say, hey, which one of you guys is really willing to consider an easement through your property that will serve the benefit, the betterment of a significant amount of people, including yourselves,
Yeah.
in your neighborhood. And that's where it's gotta start in order to get the interest.
I appreciate
that
that.
you're looking for. Because we vetted out a lot of the locations.
Mm-hmm.
We know the most important ones, we know the low-hanging fruit, we know the high-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So I would focus on how you're gonna reach out to people, and then once that's done,
So David, what is your, obviously, the, you know, a reciprocal offer, some sort of reciprocity on the part of the village in terms of, you know,
I'm not sure I can tell you that sitting right here, that's something for you to figure out. I mean, obviously, there would be improvements
Well,
that come along with it.
right,
Landscaping, things like
So
that.
that would-
Screen their residents from any potential intrusion that
Of
would
course.
come with it.
right, right.
We had to do that with the streetscape,
Right.
household by household, so, yeah. we used to do
And
that.
as you know, Pete, in some of those areas, it's one or two houses. It isn't like there's 9 on the
Right,
block.
right.
And in some of them, it's like, just pick, there's 8 or 9. Pick which ones line up best to get through
Right.
versus the ones where there's only one path. You gotta knock on their door and, you know,
Right.
maybe they're the ones where, you know, it could cost them.
But obviously, it's, you know, it's a lot easier if there are offerings out there that we could
Start thinking about that.
be
Think
prepared
about what are viable things that don't cost the village
before we
amount of
can.
money and things
speak.
that we would,
Yeah.
is in any negotiation or that you'd be probably doing anyways.
HRC has done a bunch of work on this, so make sure you
And
keep them involved.
Chris Duzen as well. Chris lives in a neighborhood where this happened.
Right,
Right,
right.
right.
Okay, cool, very
That's our
good.
report.
Thank you. Okay, next item, we have a public hearing that I want to call to order for amending the zoning map to include certain properties in the public and institutional zoning district. Those properties are the Franklin Community Church, the FCA properties, Huda School, the Franklin Cemetery, and the Franklin Sledding Hill. So I'd like to open the hearing. Anyone has comments, please come up to the microphone.
We have 3 seats up front here, if anybody wants to come in.
Al Becky, 32900 Colony Hill, President of the Franklin Community Association. With regard to the GI district for the FCA property, the Board of Review, our board has not been able to come to terms with a positive response to you all. And we need just some more time to discuss things and to evaluate or negotiate with the planning commission on maybe some revisions that we would like to see. So with that, I'm going to let Rich step in and make some comments.
Thank you, Al. Rich Perot on Woodside, Treasurer of the FCA. A couple things. At this time, the FCA has carefully reviewed but does not want to be included in the zoning district. However, it has been a very helpful catalyst for the FCA as a whole to take a look at its current residential zoning and realize that is not where we want to be. So the FCA is going to take an initiative and work with the Village Zoning Commission to determine how we can migrate from our current residential zoning to something else. But as Al said, it's going to be a little bit of a journey, but we appreciate the work that's been done here because it is just highlighted, we're not going to stay where we are, zoned residential. We're going to move to something different, but we will take it upon ourselves as the FCA to initiate that process and then work closely with the village as we evolve. Thank you.
Go ahead, David.
It's a public hearing, all we're doing is
Public
listening.
that's
We,
right.
it's on our
Right,
agenda
okay,
next.
sorry.
Anybody else with public hearing comments? Go ahead, step up to the platform, please, or the microphone, please. Identify yourself.
All right, good evening. My name is Tony Bull. That's spelled B-U-L-L, just like the animal. And I'm here on behalf of the Franklin Community Church. At this time, we do not support being included in the amendment to be rezoned public institutional. I'm not a lawyer. I'm an engineer at Ford. But to me and many of the members of the Board of Trustees, it sounds as though we're being asked to give up some control on how we authorized use of our property. I expect a lot of this has to do with the use of the parking lot for village events. Currently, if there's ever an event being held by the village, in the spirit of cooperation, we've always been given a call, and we've never said no. I mean, any event, frankly, the roundup, pet adoptions. I mean, we've never said no to anyone from the village asking for the use of our parking lot. So I guess we as a board would like to understand the need for this amendment to be rezoned to public institutional from residential. So in the very least, we'd like more time to understand what it means for us as a church body. There's only 6 of us trustees. I'm the chair, and we do have a couple of lawyers in our congregation, but yeah, we just like to, in the spirit of transparency and cooperation, we just like to at least have more time to understand what this measure means for the board, for the church and for the board of trustees. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Any other public hearing comments? Okay, let's close the public hearing and move on to old business, which is to consider the second final reading of the public institutional zoning for the same properties that we just talked about. Do we have a motion to do something with this, and what is something?
Based on hearing from Franklin Community Church and the FCA, I think we should pause.
So,
You need to put something on the table for discussion.
all right, so can I interject? Because I think everybody's still missing what's going on here. So, Franklin Community Church, your land right now is zoned single-family residential, okay? With, as far as we know, no restriction on it. From what we understand, you just consented to allowing the historic district to turn your property into historic property, so you're now subject to the historic district. But as it stands right now, the way it's zoned, if you chose to sell your property, and it isn't anything that we're doing to gain control of the parking lot, we already have an agreement with the parking lot, there's nothing to be gained or lost there. Right, so you're zoned just like the Franklin Community Association's property is, you are zoned residential. So that means we theoretically could not stop you tomorrow from selling your chunk to a developer who would come in and turn the church, maybe with the exception of the church itself because you just made it historic, but turn your property into residential homes. As the same thing could happen with the FCA property if they just amended their bylaws to allow that to happen. So what we've been doing is trying to rezone the properties which are being used for public institutional purposes. Our future land use map designates them for public institutional purposes, but are zoned, and zoning means what you use it for now, is zoned residential. So we have publicly institutional planned and used properties zoned for something different. So what we were trying to do is bring the zoning consistent with that. And we wrote a public institutional ordinance, which, in my opinion, is very flexible for public institutional zoning, including allowing half the use of your property for commercial retail purposes, even though it's zoned public institutional. If you said to me that the church has concerns and we wanted to make the future land use of the church commercial, I would say absolutely. And then let's change the future land use map to commercial instead of residential, or commercial instead of public institutional. But the way you're using it today is public institutional. Now, you're operating it as a special land use under residential, but nothing stops us from stopping you from tomorrow turning it into houses. That's what we're trying to accomplish. It has nothing to do with limiting your ability. And if the church ever went away, we have all kind of, I think everybody would love to see it still look like a church, but maybe be used for something, for a lot of the uses that we've been striving to get here in the village, and one of the few places that has the mass in order to do that. So that's what this is about. This is nothing trying to hijack your uses or change your uses or get one over on you. We're just trying to make things consistent. And you, the Huda School, another one, they could go away tomorrow and make it a subdivision. We really couldn't stop them. If it's not zoned residential anymore, at least before they could do that, they would have to rezone it back to residential and convince people there's a reason to do it. Right now, they really just have to apply for a permit. That's what this whole exercise has been to do, as well as to analyze the future land uses. And in two of these instances, two of the properties that are being used public institutional, we've decided in the future shouldn't be that. The fire station and the post office. Yours falls in that category too. Whereas in the future, if it's not used for a church, it has a huge amount of commercial types of uses, but none of them were really ever designed to be where you could just, right now it's kind of changed, I will admit, with the historic designation, that church is probably now never going anywhere, but somebody still could figure out a creative way to develop around it. That's what we're doing, just so you know. If you need a delay, we can certainly kick this down the road. I see that the FCA and Al, Kathy, respectfully, come on. You guys have known about this for a year. We need more time. What is the other zoning category that you think is possible out there other than keeping it residential? But if the ask is, let's kick this down the can another 30 days, fine. I'm not just sidelining this thing for eternity.
indefinitely.
It's not, there's a purpose here. It isn't to try and take away anybody's rights. It's to protect the village. That's it.
Understood. I understand that the property today is probably being used in terms of public institutional. In our spirit of cooperation, we've probably operated that way for years. And I understand that you must have much better command of the law in terms of real estate than I or many of the boards, my membership on the committee may have. So we are respectively just asking for a pause so that we can solicit some help from our congregation in understanding what there's more. Our fear is that there's more to this than meets the eye, and we would just like to get better
No hidden agenda there.
understanding.
Constitutional zoning ordinance that we're asking to be moved you to and study it.
Right.
We spent a lot of time on it and making sure that it still had flexibility, including if it was to go to the FCA property.
Right. I mean, we
as
just
well as our own
invested,
property.
we just invested $120,000 in a brand-new playground.
Sure.
That property's going nowhere. The baseball diamond is the other chunk of property. That's going nowhere. The lawn in front of the church is going nowhere. You have no fear of this property being parceled off and sold.
Sounds
may I
like we're-
suggest we put this off
Yeah.
30 days?
Sounds like we're
giving
okay till
your
next month.
Board a chance to
Right.
meet with trustee
Okay.
Goldberg and/or any,
Well, do we have the right to opt out? Does anyone have the right to opt out of this thing, or is this
Technically,
coming?
no. It's our legislative act. We usually don't like to rezone people's lands against them, without having a real serious reason for it.
What about
So-
land value? What's the effect on real estate value being
What are
rezoned?
you trying to evaluate it as?
So-
If you're
so
trying to
that was
evaluate
David's
it for a
point,
subdivision,
right, is
we have a
that
problem with
you're
that.
just-
I can't-
So David's point is that if you were zoned as commercial, which I believe the firehouse was, right? That was their thing, is that they're within the commercial. So for us to come in and move them over into something outside of commercial deeply impacts the value. You can only sell the church as a house, as a residential property. So if you were coming in here saying, no, our intention is to be commercial because that is an increase to the value of the property, that makes more sense, but it makes us plan and say, if they were to leave, it would likely go into a commercial use. Whereas right now, the fear is because it's residential and you have one residential structure, there's not a lot of value there. The value is creating a subdivision. And we can't stop that because of how it's zoned currently.
Okay.
Okay, so let's roll this over till the December
Thank you.
meeting,
Thank you.
which
Good time.
gives both parties time to,
Unless you want to just approve the other three, or the other three, Huda and Cemetery and Study Hall, why not?
No, I think we
let's just do them all for next month. Okay, let's move on to item
Property is platted.
B.
They're just finishing.
Nobody stops anyone from coming and pulling a permit right now
Bill, you need
along
to
Cornelius
close the
baseball
public
field. and put-
No, that, we have closed it, we're on old business now.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay, do you want to do a
So we've decided 10A, we're gonna reschedule till our December
We
meeting.
need a motion.
Do we need a motion?
Motion to reschedule the second and final reading of the public institutional zoning to the December meeting.
Second.
Second? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, we have a tax split application for a couple properties. As we got into looking at properties, we need to realign the tax identification. I have to file an application with the county to do that. And Roger or David, can you,
Well, yeah, at our last meeting, we discussed this. You guys authorized Peter to go vet it out. We communicated with the county. The county said that what we really should do is apply for a land division. What we're basically doing is taking two PIN numbers, creating two new PIN numbers, but the PIN numbers are gonna represent the properties that each of the parties own. So now the Village of Franklin, all of the properties we own, which is just 79, 80 in the fire, or the police station, will go into one tax ID number. And then the FCA's property, which includes lot 78, which wasn't included in their property, they'll get a new tax bill that will include that, so that the tax bills and the ownership match up. We ran a potential application by the county equalization department. They said that our application was correct, and Peter wrote a resolution for us to adopt in order to authorize Bill to sign those two affidavits that we approved last meeting, and to go ahead and submit this land division application.
so, I'm confused here. What are we trying to do? What's the
So right-
action?
This thing that Peter just handed out.
Okay.
Yeah, tax. So this resolution is to sort of clarify and have an audit trail of the steps we took to
Okay.
straighten out the property.
Sorry.
David is working, trustee Goldberg is working on the tax ID split number, and he'll have that. This gives authorization to all of us to go ahead and memorialize that and file it with the Register of Deeds.
So we have a resolution, we have a motion to adopt this,
Motion to adopt the tax parcel split application.
I second.
any further discussion? We don't need to read this, do we?
No, we don't need to read it. We've all read it. We just need to agree that we adopt this resolution.
Okay,
I made the motion, it's been seconded.
And I-
okay. All in favor of adopting the resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, now on to new business, consider the Extenet Systems application. So we have a letter in our packet here from McKenna that the Planning Commission has looked at this application. They held a public hearing. So it's up to us to continue moving on this application, so. Do we have a motion here to approve the Extenet System small cell
Motion to
special land
approve.
use?
So we have.
We-
No, I think he's just trying to open the floor for you. Yeah, procedurally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second, I didn't pick that.
I made the motion to,
I second.
Okay. So,
now.
council comments?
I have none.
Well, let's hear from them.
Yeah, I wanna-
I don't want to reiterate anything they're going to say,
Okay.
so let's get the
Go ahead,
public's
guys.
comments.
Rich Parada, Woodside. The hearing that was held for the Planning Commission was, I believe, intended to be a public hearing, but a decision was made that that an administrative hearing would suffice. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know what that really means, but I do know that it meant that there were only a handful of people there. So, per the McKenna report, the council, at its discretion, may also schedule a public hearing, and the planning commission has actually recommended that the village council hold a public hearing prior to acting on this case. We fully support that. We understand the motion that you have before, but, you know, there are a number of folks in the community on both sides of the issue, I think, that would appreciate having some insight and visibility into the process to this point, what is before you, and what would unfold from a planning perspective. So, would suggest that a public hearing would be a necessary and good outcome for this process to keep the community transparency and inclusivity on the matter. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Is Stuart still here? Yeah. Stuart, you, in your presentation, you made some comments about the discussion at the planning commission.
Right.
I'm looking forward to hearing the comments of the residents and interested parties. I wonder if, to start this out, you would frame this up for us so that I have some context. We have some context for what we're going to hear from the interested parties. Tell us,
Okay.
summarize what the planning commission decided and what the sentiments were to be held.
Well, my feelings from what we had talked about, we were not. There were several items that we wanted to make sure were understood well, but we were instructed to move forward on bringing it to council with regards to those, even with those items pending. One of which is the positioning on the road relative to 13 Mile. It's in the current site plan that they have is awfully close to 13 Mile. We have snow flooding that happens on 13 Mile during the winter when snow melts. So I want to make sure that the road commission is aware of that location and whether or not that will be a problem to put a post next to where vehicles are driving. The other stipulation that we were concerned about, I believe he's here tonight, or I thought I saw him earlier. The homeowner whose property will be affected by the pole, he came to a previous meeting, not the last month we had, and said that he was able to work with them on moving the location on his property, so it wasn't in a location that would be right outside a window that he gets to look at all day. But we wanted to confirm whether or not that actually was updated by the updated site plan with the homeowner and make sure they were okay with that location. And then also, there was not a strong favor for this because of the location and how it's placed, so close to the road. But we needed to, it wasn't really our place to give that opinion on moving this forward, so that's why we were recommended to move forward and accepted only to pass it on with that information to council.
So is this one pole?
Yes.
And do we have any say in this?
That
Does-
was
No.
my question too.
I mean,
don't know if
I-
it's
So there's-
for planning or
impression-
Peter, but
Yeah,
what do
I
we
can
do?
opine on that. There's a small cell act that was enacted, I think in 2018, in MCL 460.1315 really ties your hands as to what you can do. There's only limited grounds for a council such as yourself to go ahead and object, and it's basically if it interferes with safe operation of traffic control equipment, interferes with sight lines or clear zones for transportation or pedestrians, materially interferes with the ADA, stuff of that sort. You're pretty limited.
So that's my overall concern, is that we've been down this road before as it relates to cell service, and that we, as a body, are powerless with regard to this. So we can listen to everyone's concerns, but I'm not sure there's anything we can do about it.
And from my understanding, there's 2 other DSMs that are put up on the west side of Inkster that Farmington Hills has control over that property.
Correct.
So they're already going in place and moving forward. It's just, this is the one on that network of 3 that is, that's up to us to decide.
I'm going off on a tangent, but the planning commission was looking for a little bit of work, and if they want to revamp this, because the ordinance we have is from 2013, the Small Cell Act that was enacted by the state of Michigan is in 2018. So it's outdated. We tried to comply, and planning commission did a very nice job of complying with whatever is allowed under state law. And we would need to revamp this whole ordinance to make it compliant.
But that's a separate issue.
Correct.
Right
Yes,
now,
yeah.
what
We're
Correct.
talking about
we're
specifically
talking about dealing with
this.
this one, okay,
Right.
and we're operating as though we are in compliance with the 2018 law, right?
Correct,
That's
to the
what I'm
extent
wondering.
we thought, like, McKenna, Mr. Dusan did a nice job of explaining
Yeah.
just a couple of items. There's, our ordinance says there's a 200-foot minimum setback, but that's not part of the Michigan, Small Cell Act.
Again, the bigger question is, this is asking for our consideration of an application, but we have no purview here. And if that's the case, then it's moot, right?
Yep.
So, I'm not saying you can't speak to it, I'm just saying, yeah,
We'll get there, we'll get there.
okay.
Is, Peter, is your, and Stuart, is opting out entirely an option?
No, there's no opt-out provision.
Okay, so it's a question of where this is going to be as opposed to if, is that correct?
Don't quote me.
Okay.
They propose where it's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and you can provide an alternate proposal, and I think it must be within 40 or 50 feet.
Yeah, it's my understanding.
And they can veto that and say no based on the elements described in the statute.
And
So we
they
can
believe they
simply
moved it
ask for
100 feet already.
And we've already done that, I believe.
And we have
We've
done
done
that,
that.
and we have done that.
And their response was,
They cooperated. with
They moved it,
Yeah.
where we asked them to move it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Right. So,
thank you for that summary, Stuart.
so let's spend some time here and listen, and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm a resident from Woodside. I'm actually right directly across from where the cell tower is going to go up. And I'm talking on behalf of the whole neighborhood of Woodside. Most of us neighbors here, we don't think that we need it. We don't want it in this area. If you're saying that, that you can't opt out, maybe whoever wants it in Franklin, maybe they can put it in front of their property, but our area, we really don't want it there, so.
okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jacqueline Flemmer. I live at 3088 Rosemond Lane, which is the house that's right directly next to the cell phone tower. I come without too much information because I just realized the proximity of the cell phone tower today. So it's brand new for me. But my 7-year-old lives on the 3rd floor, about less than 100 feet probably from the proposed location of the cell phone tower. And when I looked briefly at some of the research, a lot of the research is done at ground level for the cell phone tower frequencies coming in. It's not done at a higher level. And I feel that because this wasn't really given out this information to the neighbors directly close to it since it was moved, because I heard Woodside like in the summer. I'm busy, I'm in the Guard, I have a full-time job, missed it. And now I find out that we're about to approve a cell phone tower 100 feet from my kid's bedroom window, who's on the 3rd floor. And I heard these cell phone towers are 40 feet up, and that's where a lot of the research is done, on the ground level. We're not there. And then my across the street neighbor, they're also high up. So I really think it's gonna be imperative that I have another chance to figure out what my rights are with that being so close for the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for hearing us. I'm Kat Phillips at 31265 Woodside Drive. And it's really ironic that we started out trying to solve what we considered to be a problem, and now what we've done is created one. Because everyone in anywhere near this proposed site wants nothing to do with the cell tower and has no issue with their service. Most people don't even have T-Mobile. I happen to have T-Mobile. I'm one of the few in the area that do. I don't have an issue with my cell service. But I do have an issue with this tower. And I find it really ironic that the placement of this tower, where apparently we've heard from various residents that have issues with their cell service, that this tower is not going to address any of those issues, but in fact going to create a problem for all of us who'd want nothing to do with this tower. So what I would suggest we do is figure out a placement that makes sense for our community. And that is to move it away from this particular location. I believe if we talk with T-Mobile and Exton and describe kind of what problem now we want to solve, which is to put it in a place, if we have to have a cell tower, because that's kind of what I'm hearing from all of this information and this, I know we have legislation in place that calls for this quick rollout, all of that sort of thing. So what if we looked at this as a community and came together as a community and appreciated and respected the desires and wishes of the people who would like increased cellular service, and appreciate and respect the interests of the people who don't want this near their properties. And when I hear that these residents, that they don't even know, this tower is going up in a place where nobody wants it, where potential harm can come from them, and I know we can't talk about safety. Oddly, in 2019, the FCC lost a case due to their inability to provide updated safety. That is currently being, that's in the courts right now. But we can't, obviously, we can't use that as any kind of directive, and we've been told we can't even discuss safety, which to me is ludicrous, but it is where we are. So what I would like to propose is that we have a public hearing with the effort and interest of all of the residents who have an interest and desire to talk about this, and with you, our city, our village leaders. Let's find a solution to this that is amenable to the people that you represent. We've elected you, we voted you in office, we've given you this, the keys to our kingdom, right? We just want our homes we want to be able to live our lives independent of an imposed issue, okay? We can all operate within our own homes, provide our cellular service, our Wi-Fi, whatever it is, we can all do that independently. But we don't want to be imposed upon, our rights taken away, our inability to affect this decision that is going to gravely affect us. So can we please have a public hearing, invite the public interest and opinion, because there's many of us that want to be able to share our voices and come up with a solution. We need to be solution-driven on this. And the way this thing is going forward, this is not solution-driven. It's going to divide and create problems for our community. We are hopeful. I was on the DEI committee with David. Our whole interest was bringing the community together and rallying our Franklin villagers as one big village working together for the betterment of our community. Let's focus on that, because this is not the way to do it. That's all. Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Tony Shonak, 31055 Woodside. And the new location that was proposed and is in the write-up is 135 feet from our bedroom. And I think that that's extremely close. Everything that I've seen on the internet was, the safe distance was 400 meters. If you're less than 400 meters, you're in trouble, basically. And that could be wrong. I mean, there's small towers, there are big towers. I mean, there's limited data out there. It's very much driven by the special interest groups, and some of these studies are all from special interest groups who have interest in promoting and building these towers for, profit. But when you're 135 feet from, the new tower, or 165 feet from the new tower location, I don't know how many of you would want that in your backyard or across the street from you. We never came here asking for improved service. We're very happy with our service. You can go out, you can research, you can look for AT&T. We did our research when we moved into that area. We found out that AT&T has the best service in that area, so that's what we switched to. People who have T-Mobile, maybe they should look at alternative carriers, or if they want T-Mobile, I really like the comment that Kat made about having other solutions, other proposals. In the past and over the summer, they talked about, in the cemetery or that location, that's a high centralized location, it would have much better reach. for the overall Franklin community than on the edge of Franklin where Woodside is. I mean, we're very close to Inkster. If you can imagine that in your head, 13 in Inkster, how is that tower gonna have the reach to the entirety of the rest of Franklin, or improve these people who come here and complain about wanting improved service? Where do they live? And is there a mass need or desire to have improved cell in their neighborhood? If there is, they have to build a new tower, a new pole anyway. It was written up that they couldn't use an existing pole because of vegetation. As the next thing that we're gonna get here is everybody wants to cut down trees in Franklin just so to improve the cell reception in their neighborhood. So we're gonna have a mass, cutting down of vegetation and trees over 30 feet high in all of Franklin, just to improve that. Yeah, I mean, you can imagine where this could go. What's gonna happen when Verizon wants to put theirs up there, or all of the other carriers want to put theirs up there? We're gonna have the similar kind of issues. I think we do need to look at a bigger holistic view of this whole thing, look at alternative location options, see what makes the most sense. To me, either centralized in Franklin makes the most sense, or by the people who have come here asking for improved service. What is their location? Put that mobile tower that has to be built anyway, right? It has to be a brand new tower. They're gonna put a 40-foot pole right 165 feet or whatever from our bedrooms. Put it near to that location that has the bad service. That's all we're asking for and want. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comments.
Paula Slough, Woodside. I know you might not be able to change this, but can't the people that live on the street, don't we have some say in this? I've got 5 of the people, we only have 9 people on our block. 5 of the homeowners are here. We can get them all here. We don't want this on our street. And I understand you understand, and I know that you may have legal ramifications with this, and I understand there's costs involved with this. But don't we count at all? I just don't understand. I don't understand how we're the ones that live there and nobody cares that we care. So please give us a hearing so that we can do something about this. We have to be able, I mean, we're a small community. Aren't we supposed to all pull together for each other? I just don't understand how everybody tells us we can't do anything. I mean, they're paying somebody. How can, and when he says they're gonna have one tower there, well, it's T-Mobile, and then AT&T pays that T-Mobile, and then they put another node on there, and someone else pays them, and they put another node on there. And that's not true?
That doesn't, no, it doesn't work
Really?
that way.
It's true.
They all use the same, yeah, but, okay.
Okay.
Thanks for
All right,
comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just have one more thing to say. I think about it every day. There was a neurosurgeon that came over the summer and stood up and communicated his opinion. And he gave some evidence of what he was seeing, in his business, his line of work, neurosurgery again. He said, if a cell phone tower goes up in Franklin, he's moving. That is a huge concern to me, my family, and the neighborhoods of that area. So I just want you guys to hear that again, and again, think, I want that in my backyard? I'm looking at that. Thank you.
One more comment, David.
Last one, I'm sorry, I know I already spoke once, but I know we're talking about Woodside, and people in that community have been saying how they feel about it, and maybe they had a chance to go to the other hearings, but the people close to me, close to Rosemont, actually, a lot of them closer to the cell phone tower, we kept on hearing Woodside, so I didn't care about as much as I could have, because that's not right by my house. But my neighbors, my direct neighbors, are all in agreement with me that they're adamantly against it. They just couldn't make this session today when I told them this afternoon that this was here. So we really need a chance to do more if there's a possibility.
Can I just say one statement? Because I'm getting a lot of, if you guys were in the same position. Just so you know, Mr. Seltzer lives on Scenic Highway. There are 2 of these exact same nodes within about 100 feet of your house. One was just installed, the other's been there for years. I live on Willow Green Court, 2 houses off of Inkster. They're installing 3 of them on Inkster within 400 feet of my house. Pam Hansen lives 3 houses off of Wing Lake and 14 Mile. They're installing one at 14 Mile and Wing Lake.
Which is my house.
Oh, which is right at Mr. Hank's corner, because they're 3 houses, they're 3 houses away from each other. So we're all impacted by this, okay? Some of us have different beliefs on what those health risks are for ourselves. And your request for a public hearing, I don't think that we're gonna freak out if we have time within our application to give you the public hearing that you're requesting. I think that's such a big deal, but we're all, 3 of us sitting here have them within those same distances that you're talking, that you're living with. But we realize that there isn't all that much we can do other than decide that the Village of Franklin is gonna be the ones that are gonna pony up the money to say, we're gonna take on T-Mobile and Extenet and deny an application and have them decide, well, all right, we're gonna sue Franklin because they're the ones that wanna deny the application, and then we're coming to you because we need money to defend a lawsuit that our air and emissions company said, we're not defending you because you approved an act that you knew you totally couldn't do. Those are the things we're confronted with, okay? Nothing has to do with not feeling your strife or concern. We are living the same thing. We unfortunately are living in a world where these 7 of us don't get to make those end decisions. And we could, as a group, decide to be that guy, but that's what we're talking about. And they might say, yeah, fine, forget it. And they don't use us as the example. Or they say, you know what, maybe we do.
Well, one way that I could, again, Cat Phillips, 31265 Woodside Drive. I do understand what you're saying, David, for sure. And at the same time, I think having a public hearing would really unify the community. It would give us a chance to at least share how we feel about all this stuff and how we want to proceed. I also happen to know one of the head legal counsel people in this space who actually talked about that today. We would not be liable for T-Mobile's legal costs or the cost of their attorney or anything like that. We would be only required to pay for our own legal fees if we decided to fight this. And I think if we talked about this as a community and we decided we wanted to be that guy, we might end up being a hero community. The other side of that is we live in quite a wealthy community, and really maybe it's up to the community to decide that maybe they want to take this on, and maybe this is something we can fund as a community. So I think we would at least like an opportunity to share some ideas and thoughts. I can also provide some help with the consultation of this legal counsel that I know that is he's an expert in this space. And I've been talking to him a little bit about what are the options, what could we possibly do. But think of it as more of a coming together and a supportive thing in nature. That's really what I have been hoping for all along, that we could come together as a community and come up with a solution and be transparent about it. And I'm sorry that you have these towers by your homes. It really, at the end of the day, I know the data is damning. I know the safety issues. And there is a tremendous amount of data that's available out there that show the potential harm that can be caused by these things. Okay, and it's only getting worse. You know, this is 5G. Well, what about 10G? And it's going to keep going from there. So I think we need to be as proactive as a community. Let's let the voices be heard. Let's think about it as a coming together as opposed to an opposition war, you know, one versus the other. Let's not do that. Let's come together.
Kat,
Let's
okay.
share some solutions.
That's cool.
We're not opposed to.
we got-
Okay, cool. So that's what we're basically asking for.
Kat, we're one community.
Awesome.
We're one community.
Thank you, Mark.
All right? We're one community.
Are there any other comments here before we move on? Okay.
So at the end of the day, we're looking for a public hearing prior to any movement on this
We heard
application.
you.
I have
Kat,
one
we heard you.
question. I have one question for you, Bill. Since you spent the most time, do we have an opportunity to talk yet or no?
Well, when the public's done, then let's
Okay,
let
okay.
the village. Okay, go ahead, Kathy.
So my question for you is that you've spent the most time, I think, talking to T-Mobile. Would you say that that's the
Between
case?
David and,
Okay, but I know you had some relationship
Right.
with them where you had talked and you had come to that agreement to move the tower from the one place to the other. You had been talking to them.
right,
Was there any discussion, or could there be a discussion of saying, we're really getting a lot of backlash from the community. Do we really need this tower? Can we ask them one last final time? Do we really have to have it? We're hearing so many people come. Can we give it a try with the current towers that you're putting already in Farmington Hills and in Bloomfield Hills? Can we see if that's good enough?
We can always ask anything, Kathy. I think the issue is when they came to us, they said, we have done an analysis of our service in Franklin. Here's the spots where we're not as good as we could be, and here's what we'd like to do. And they didn't, it's not, here's what we'd like to do, here's what we're gonna do. And again, we had some pushback from one guy. The tower was right at the end of his driveway, so that's when I got into it, and we talked to him, and don't put it at the end of the driveway, move it somewhere close by, and
It's hidden in
we
the
tried to
trees,
keep
yeah.
the 100-foot rule, which I think we've done, and I understand it's gonna be within 100 feet of somebody's house, but,
Would that be a possibility that we could go back
I'd be
one more
glad to call
time
him,
before we
but
agree to this?
I doubt that that's gonna change it, but I'll certainly be glad to call him. But
Why don't we take the time to go back and revisit this
The
as
pro-
a council?
the problem we're faced with is we have 90 days to approve this thing, and we're 60 days into it.
Is that true, though? Can I ask a question? Because they didn't agree to, they didn't give us all the information that, I know that the planning commission had to go back and beg them for, can you give us all the information, because they did not supply it willingly.
This application, I believe, is pending since May or June, but it's been amended and we asked for more information. So I would have to do an analysis to see when the last application
Okay.
was. But yes, you have 90 days to essentially
Once
approve
they've
it.
given us all the information that we
Otherwise,
required,
it could be
right?
deemed approved. So you're
And if
facing
we
that
don't
prospect.
do anything, they're just moving
They're
forward.
gonna-
It's deemed
Yeah.
approved.
Right.
And even if we disapprove, they're still gonna move forward,
Well, we'd probably get sued.
right?
Right.
Well, just a quick point of
We may be on
clarification.
the 90 days. I don't know without.
In the planning commission meeting, that concept was brought up, hey, the clock is running, we need to make a decision. And I think it's one of the things Stuart said, I'm gonna put words in your mouth, but the planning commission needed to make a decision on what to do. So they did. So I don't believe, and perhaps as you guys go through it, I don't believe the clock is, I don't think you're gonna run out of time. In other words, I don't think the 90-day window from the very beginning till it was amended, till it was approved and all, I think you still got the 90 days you need. Maybe you guys can confirm that. But I think the thought is the clock will not run out since the planning commission, made their decision, voted and recommended it for consideration. So I believe the clock is kind of starting now and that you have time to go through this process.
So
But I'm not,
theoretically, we have another 90 days.
Well, I don't know that. I don't think that's true, guys, so. And Peter, you have to give us some guidance on where
Yes,
do we stand.
Again, I'd have to look at all the applications. I'm not sure what they submitted to planning commission.
Right.
But I'd have to do an analysis
Right.
on it. But I wouldn't bet my head that you get another 90
And I
days.
s-
So why don't we find that out?
So,
Yeah.
And then we can address whether we need to set up an emergency meeting or not.
But I do
Or
want to.
if you do nothing, it's just gonna happen. as far
The
as
Cell
things-
Act
Can I
is
ask a
not,
question? When we schedule a public hearing of this sort, this isn't, so what would you do? Would you just post it, you're not talking about sending a letter out to every single resident, are you? Or are we just talking about, what is the public hearing that is being requested, other than the standard
Can I
you
jump in real
posted?
quick?
Yeah, that's
Can
what
we
I'm.
just do a town hall so we don't have to go through bureaucratic costs, right, associated with it, where we still allow for a forum for people to come and work together?
And have them be present
Yes,
from
correct.
T-Mobile.
Correct. Well, invite them, right?
That would be awesome.
Right? I mean, otherwise, what's the,
Yeah, and the other thing too,
to
so.
hear people vent?
No, so what I was gonna say is I support having a town hall on this. Again, we have plenty of people who are impacted, and what I would say is, in addition to that, with the forum, leverage it as an opportunity to have some type of collection of signatures, so that you can send something to the carrier to actually, I don't think you'll have success if we have, because again, there's not a lot we can do other than try and set you up for success. And so if we do have a town hall, use it as a forum to kind of, it's not gonna be ideas that can be pitched to us as much as hear our story, right? Hear how it's impacting our lives and really just try and appeal to the emotional, the human element of it with them. Because I think that's gonna be the best outcome is really, you're already installing them within this these many cell towers along Inkster. Why don't we pause for a little bit, see how it impacts they could totally say, no, sorry, and move on. But I think it's better to go with kind of more formulated strategic attack to a town hall than just a, hey, council, we're gonna tell you, I don't mean this to sound demeaning, but like, this is our story, right? Because we totally understand the human element that you're coming to us with.
And the other thing is, and the complaints may be coming from the other side of Inkster. It may be the Farmington people that are complaining about their service. If your theories are correct that you don't have any issues with your service, we hear all the time about spotty service in the village as you're driving through, people lose their calls. The point is, we can only control so much, and when they're putting it on boundaries, we are bound by Southfield, by Farmington, by Bloomfield Township, and these decisions by T-Mobile and others are made based upon those populations, not just ours. So we need them to be present.
So that would be so perfect, because
Yeah.
for us just to keep telling the same story,
We already know it, and David has articulated that we all share in that, the issue. It's not like we're sitting here going, you got, you know.
So that would be
Okay,
perfect, if you could do
fine.
that.
With
so-
one caveat, the application needs to be put on hold. It cannot be
Well,
approved
we're gonna look into that. And-
until we move
We may
forward.
not be able to do that, but
That's
Okay,
correct.
okay,
That has to happen.
okay.
I do want to
Thank you.
speak.
So really quickly, one thing that we've,
Oh, yeah, we'll use the church for sure. For sure, we'd love to use the church, absolutely.
what,
Cooperation, look
There you
at this. This is love.
okay.
one thing I think we're overlooking though, just regard,
Like-
on this though, is that
Throw strafe in the
there
mouth.
is,
Everything's great.
the final location might not be where they say in the site plan based upon what the Grove Commission says. So even if you have a town hall discussing it, you might be discussing the wrong zone if the Grove Commission says that's not a viable location. So I don't know where we stand on the Road Commission's input on that, but without having that input, that site plan might even be the final location, so.
I was told that they had contacted Road Commission, sent a letter, and they haven't received anything back, which isn't surprising.
Right.
But that doesn't hold up our compliance with it. It doesn't say, you have to hold or
But-
wait for a conditional approval.
But we have neighbors that are within 100 feet, and then it's gonna change location,
I appreciate that, I really do.
so.
There's heartfelt emotions here, but I'm just stating you what the law is. The law doesn't provide for, it doesn't expressly exclude public hearings or
Right.
town halls or anything like that, but it does say you have to comply, and there's only very limited grounds for you to deny.
Right.
We can beg, but we could.
But if the
You could
but if
try.
the road commission does, if we have to hear from the road commission anyway, whether or not they're gonna accept the location anyway, right? I mean, is that,
That's Road Commission. That's
Okay.
them, that's not us.
Yeah.
I think
Alright.
what
The road
I think,
commission
Stuart,
talks
if you don't
to-
mind, to be totally wrong, I think the concern, you're saying, again, it could be all moot because the concerned population could be totally unimpacted if the road commission comes in and says, okay, yep, can't put it here, you have to put it somewhere else. And my concern would be that at 11:59, the road commission says, nope, good to go, and then 12 o'clock is when we would have to submit something. So I think that's just something that we have to look more into is
Understood.
what are the timelines, like really understand what our timeline is, because it's a competing interest.
Well, one thing about that timeline too, the application needs to be complete before the timeline starts. But I verify
We'll get
that
into
for
that.
sure.
Right,
But
we'll get it.
it's
Yep.
not, it's not complete until those 4 things are taken care of. The road commission, thing, there's a couple other things.
We did get the one letter.
Stuff. But anyway, it is not complete yet. So, at least not from what we read from the notes from the planning commission. So, again, we're just asking that you hold on the decision with the application.
We're with
Have a
it.
public hearing.
Okay.
Let's come
with it.
together
Okay.
and figure this out. Thanks.
So, Peter, you owe us some explanation
I
of the
will-
timing.
Look at all the applications that were submitted
Okay,
and see if.
okay.
Okay.
Quick thought, Peter, you just mentioned applications plural. Is there another application that we need to be considering and concerned about at this point?
I don't know how many applications were out there, but as President Lamont said, there was a discussion to change the location. And I would consider that a second application or a continuation application.
I don't know.
So a revised application, or are we talking about a
No,
second
I- no.
application or a multiple
Yeah,
application?
Okay, we gotta move on.
We're moving on.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is really, really
I
important.
know it's really important, but let's go, okay. So,
Alright.
okay, so we're gonna try and set up we're not gonna try, we're gonna set up a public hearing here in the next,
Community
Town hall.
town hall.
or town hall.
Well, when you say town hall, I mean, like, other than at our regular, like, outside of our regular date, like,
I guess some of it depends on the timing. Let's get the timing first, and then we'll decide.
It could either be an hour before our usual council meeting, or it could be a separate meeting, depending upon the time
Timing, okay,
constraints.
very good.
And
Okay.
also, if you are able to speak with T-Mobile and you're able to ask them.
And they have to be here.
No, but if Bill were to speak to them and say, we're getting so much pushback, is there a way that you
Right.
could hold off for now?
Right.
On this one
I will do
pole,
that.
Put all your other ones up, see how they're working, and if they're working enough.
Gotcha. Okay, let's move on.
Let's go.
Bill, just one thing, great discussion, whatever. Will you guys make a motion on what you're deciding to do on this matter?
We decided to do nothing. Do we need a motion on nothing?
You talk about the town hall, or, right?
Well, it'll
That's gonna be
depend
based-
on what the timing is,
Okay.
okay?
You're committed to doing that, so we don't need a motion.
What?
You're committed to doing that, so
We said we would.
We said we would.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's cool.
You don't trust your village council? Okay, next item is the appointment of deputy police chief. With Dan Roberts' intention to retire next year, we've gone through a interview process to hire a person in the position of deputy chief with the intention that that person would replace Dan when he retires. There were a bunch, I don't know, of candidates that were considered.
17.
17, okay. We conducted a lot of interviews and came up with one guy that was the best of the bunch. His name is Kurt Lawson. He is currently the deputy chief in West. Can you hold the noise down back there, please? He's currently a deputy police in West Bloomfield Township, and clearly qualified to be a deputy chief and chief when Dan retires. So what I'm asking for is a motion from council to
I make a motion to
affirm the appointment
appoint
of Kurt
Deputy
Lawson.
Police Chief Kurt Lawson as our new
New
Deputy Police Chief.
Deputy police chief. Second?
yeah, just to clarify, since that's at the meeting, our motion has to be subject to him satisfying all the vetting out,
Yes.
background checks and all that
Subject
stuff.
to his background checks,
Yeah.
correct.
Did you give him some, because we had discussed this at the review meeting, there's conditional upon.
Yes,
All
yes, right. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to offer this job to Kurt Lawson, subject to completion of appropriate background checks.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, cool. I think this will be a great move for all of us, so. Okay, there's a amendment for stormwater management. Roger, can you quickly walk us through that one?
There's a resolution that is somewhere in here that provides for an amendment to our ordinance to come in compliance with the state regulations with respect to stormwater control.
Did this gentleman want to speak? Did you want to speak?
I'd like to comment on this if it's possible.
On what subject?
On the stormwater drain.
Oh, yeah, give us 1 sec. Let
I don't know where the process is.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were wanted to talk about the last item, but,
No,
no, okay, gotcha.
We have yeah, there's a resolution to amend chapter 1229 of the Village Code Ordinance Stormwater Management, and it's,
The specific language of the two amendments are as follows. The Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner's Stormwater Engineering Design Standards, as amended from time to time, are hereby adopted by the Village of Franklin in this article for the control and treatment of stormwater runoff.
so that's new
Secondly.
language we're adding to the
Secondly,
ordinance.
the village engineer shall have the authority to grant waivers from specific control provisions of the stormwater management standards due to site-specific conditions, but only if the waiver or waivers are as restrictive as the Oakland County standards. Our engineers have reviewed this. They recommend that you adopt these regulations to come in compliance with what is essentially the state law.
Okay. So we need a motion and a second to adopt these changes in our
Motion to adopt.
second?
Can I comment?
Yes.
Sure.
Sorry, thank you. First off, TJ, I live on Sunset. I want to say thank you very much for having me. First off, generally support this. I think it's a great idea. I think one of the fundamental problems we have in our community is stormwater drainage, and I wanted to say that as a starting point. Actually, I would ask that this doesn't go far enough. We need to be more proactive and more restrictive on this if it's a possibility. Adopting the Oakland County standards is a great start for us. We need to do something here. But also, like, the variance clause is very broadly drafted. It doesn't include an extreme measures clause. I think we should make people comply with these standards without having to have an extreme measure. Like, it needs to be a really extreme reason. It can't just be a difficulty. You know, one of the other things I would ask us to consider here about the drainage is, we all know we have drainage problems. Like, it's a thing. My yard floods, my street floods, Sunset 13 Mile. It's a big problem. The current act as it's written, if we're considering amending it, I'd ask you to consider a couple other ideas or concepts. Maybe I'm too late in the process for that, and I apologize if I am. But this only applies to disturbances of 1 acre or more. That's a massive disturbance for our neighborhood. We've had lots of lots built, and neighborhoods built, and houses built, and reconstruction done that has fundamentally changed our flow of our stormwater. So we should maybe consider pushing that down to a smaller disturbance size such that it's more applicable and we can force people to comply with the standards. It only asks for a 2-year water drainage or 2-year flood consideration when draining in the specific statute we have today. As I understand stormwater drainage models, that means it's the most amount of water that would flood in 2 years. Having a flood every 2 years seems like a terrible idea. 5, 10, 15, 20 years flood requirements would be something I'd ask you to consider. And I guess the biggest thing I struggle with is we, as a community, and I hope this is not, we have not done a great job maintaining some of our stormwater drainage systems. The culverts in the neighborhood
You
have.
missed our
You missed
6
our
o'clock meeting
point.
when there is a whole plan.
I apologize then.
Right.
You know, I mean, one of my big points was like, you know, could we consider amending this to include requirements to force people either to comply with the standard of maintaining their culverts and their drainage and that they already have, and sorry if I'm clearly repeating myself.
Really good, even with our
Right.
discussion,
I think
because
we can do this, and in addition, at a later time, look at your issues too.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, that was my ask. It's just a big thing, you know, so my big guess at the end
Right.
was,
So, yeah, we just had a study presented to us. It's $500,000 to essentially go through every single ditch, culvert in the entire village and come up with a plan for remedying. And it's about $500,000 to do it. And it will probably have to be done in phases. But things that you're talking about are exactly in here.
Yeah.
Ditches that have been eliminated, culverts that have been eliminated, culverts that are filled that we're not aware of. We did, just so you know, we just went through and cleaned out, how many?
$200,000 worth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
$200,000 worth of every single culvert that crosses a road. So anything that, any culvert that goes under a road, we just cleaned all those out. So we are definitely, we are on top of it.
Then I thank you for
This
consideration.
specific tweak that we're doing right now is more of a statutory tweak. Our
Right.
ordinance needs to get in compliance with law. But yes, we recognize, yeah, you're like literally 45 minutes late on the fact that, yeah, we have a list of goals and objectives. This is number 1 on our goals and objectives.
wonderful. Then I thank you for your time.
I'd encourage you to come back sometime and get to Dana or crew and look at exactly what they proposed.
Is there an
It's very comprehensive, and
How can I see
so
that if I'm curious?
The first
Well-
half, at 6 o'clock today, we went through all the list of our priorities. The number one thing was drainage.
Take one.
This
Well,
detailed
Well, here, Dan.
16-page drainage plan, all the culverts, all those things.
There you go.
How we can start attacking it. So-
Gotcha.
So we
Okay.
are in alignment with that. as
And
well.
we have money from the Michigan, so we've got another, what, $400,000 that we are given from, am I right on that?
No,
We were-
this was.
It's
state
a little
ARPA
less than
funds.
that.
That's the ARPA funds
Right.
that we can do with what we need to, and we've chosen to do that,
Yeah.
with our storm drainage system.
Okay,
Wonderful. Thank you
Great.
very much. I
Okay.
appreciate your
Thanks
time
for
and your
coming.
consideration.
We're on the same page.
so,
Thank you for coming.
did we make a
Not
motion or a
everybody gets
second?
that.
We did, we
quick.
did, we
allowed
did.
to make a comment. We just let him go first.
Okay. Pam has a
I
comment.
have a comment. This one's directed to Roger. The village engineer will have the authority to grant waivers, section 122911. We don't actually have a village engineer.
Yes, we do. Our contracted
HRC.
engineer is HRC, and they are our engineer of record.
Okay. I wasn't aware that we have a contract with them to be, I think
That
they're.
predates me.
What?
It predates me.
I don't think that's true.
We have,
I predate you too, and I don't remember ever signing a contract with HRC. We use
I've never
them.
said that you were our engineer.
No, but I normally knew about contracts. And I've raised this with you before. I'm nitpicking, but I would like to get clarity on if we're gonna bake HRC a private company that does a lot of engineering work for us, and there's tons of reasons to have them be our engineer. We have never, to my knowledge, formalized that relationship. You use them all the time, but does that make them our village engineer? I'm nitpicking, but I honestly, this is a way these things become embedded in our fabric, and pretty soon we turn to each other and go, well, how did they get here? And what are we gonna do about their prices? Then we start, and then we've gone against our ordinance that requires us to get bids over a certain amount of money, because we're throwing all the work to one company. I just wanna make sure we're clean.
So we're doing this to get compliant. Does the state statute that we're getting compliant with say that it's your village engine? Why couldn't it say the village council should have the authority to grant waivers from specific?
Or their designate, which is you, or, you know.
Yeah, well, that's often used, or it's
Just
designated,
the
which could
word
be
engineer, just the
HRC, could be
village,
our
yeah.
designate.
Village consultant?
Or just the village that has the authority to grant waivers.
And
Have
especially
they
when
put a
we're
person
giving
in.
authority to a contractor.
Right.
That bothers me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, as far as village engineer, I mean, we would just have to look at how that's defined, right?
Yeah.
But I totally agree that I have a huge issue giving
Well,
carte blanche authority
we've
to a
got-
third party.
We've got, you know, a zoning board of appeal, you know.
Right,
We've got appeals processes, which are committees and elected officials. We've heard, I don't know, for me, 3 years now, people complaining about how these variances are let. And it's something when you go back in time, like, how did that ever happen? Oh, it got signed and approved, and the people downstream.
We
gotta
have
take advantage of it.
contracts with Jerry, we've got contracts with our legal team, we've got contracts with Save-A-Tree, we have contracts. I don't know about this contract. Maybe we approved it and I just was sleeping. I don't know.
Well, I still think I think to Mark's point, this seems right for the zoning board of appeals.
Because this is how these things, you know, it gets convinced, the builder, the developer, this is why we have to
Yeah,
do
but
it
the
this
way
way.
the process normally works, just so you know, it would be the village council has the authority to grant the waiver. Somebody comes to us for a waiver. If we give it to them, they're good. If we deny them, then they go to the ZBA, because they
Have
were
to be denied
denied,
first.
to seek a variance
Yeah.
on this section of the ordinance, because we wouldn't give them the straight up waiver.
And I'm comfortable with that,
Yeah.
is that there's
So I just
visibility
think
to
the word
this.
engineer needs to be
Just
swapped
switch
out
to
with
council.
council.
I think that, yeah,
And
I
then we
like
could,
that much better.
or,
So let's do that and move on with this one, okay?
yeah, and if we wanna consult HRC, whoever we want to consult before we make a decision, and then if the person doesn't like our decision, they could appeal it to the
So
ZBA.
Pam, you made the initial motion, I believe. You want to amend your motion to approve this?
I'd like to, I want to amend the motion to read that the village council will have the authority to grant waivers.
Yep. On section
On section
1229.11.
122911, yeah.
Okay, second?
That's a good update. I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Good
let's
catch.
go. Got that one done. There is a proclamation for the Family Court Awareness.
Motion to approve.
Is there
I'll second.
a second? This is Family Court Awareness Month, and it really just focuses on the importance of this organization with respect to kids. So, all in favor of approving?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The next is Consider changeable copy sign in front of the Broughton House for Village Communications.
This is my topic, so I make a motion for us to consider signage in front of the village hall. As I've discussed before, I think it's a extension of our need to further our ability to communicate regularly with our villagers, constituents, and all the traffic that flows up and down Franklin Road seems to me to be a tremendous opportunity to enhance and improve that communication with simple messages like council meeting live tonight at 7 PM. Vote on Tuesday.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So this has been come up a few times already. I think what are you proposing now that's different?
I'm just furthering, I want to keep it on the agenda. I want to make sure that we actually begin to accept bids. There has been discussion about a stationary sign with movable letters, and then there's been discussion about an electronic sign that would be far more efficient, although not look as historic, but would provide the opportunity for our staff to update on an hourly basis an electronic message to the community.
Do you guys have Chris's October 5th memo? Why do I feel like I'm the only one that has this?
Definitely don't have that. On what subject?
I don't have it either.
Yeah.
I heard about it.
Chris wrote a memo on October 5th, which was for the planning commission, use a manual changeable copy sign to inform residents.
And only, and this is the one,
Okay.
and then this is the one. this
No,
is
I
the
got
manual,
this.
is the, he did an analysis of both.
Yeah, it's not in the packet.
We didn't get them in our packets.
Okay.
So what's your pleasure on this one, council?
Well, let's see what the sign, let's hear what
Would
the
you like a
paper
copy of that?
says. Sure.
It was my understanding that you received the
So we actually have a proposal from McKenna.
No, essentially what, if you want me to
Yeah, just
Chris,
paraphrase
break
it.
it down.
paraphrase it, basically what Chris said is,
Two, there's manual and there's electronic, are
Correct.
two separate documents. The only one you have is the manual.
correct.
There's an electronic one right
There,
here too.
yeah, this is the other
So
one.
I don't have that one. So how about, how about we postpone this action until every one of us has both of these memos? Because yes, one is his opinion on changeable, which he seems to be against for a bunch of reasons, including strain on the three human beings sitting before us, but also opines on whether or not electronic is necessarily bad or not. So I think
Yeah.
we should
We should look at these.
have all of that before we do anything.
Okay,
We
so
don't have
let's-
urgency.
let's-
I think we,
Okay.
Okay, no action, we'll roll it over till next month.
yeah, I'm curious
Okay.
what he says about the electronic ones.
Okay.
I saw what he said about
I'm in-
changeable.
I'm in favor of that. I was proposing a sign, and I assumed no one would be interested in electronics, but I do favor that because I think it gives us far more updated flexibility on a moment's notice if there's a storm coming.
Reading
know,
it
the
from
road-
this memo, I think Chris concurs. I'd like to see what he said on the other front.
Okay, so let's
We
put,
need to take this back and read this.
Okay.
Because I don't have either.
all right, so let's put it on the agenda for
We'll
next.
Send those out again tonight.
Yeah, please.
Be good,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
He was, our expectation was,
As long as we
and
keep it.
Chris's expectation was it would, I did the, because you were out of town, I did the communicating with Chris Dusen. So he wrote an analysis of both types of signs, raised pros and cons to both. You'll find this interesting reading, I think. And the central issue isn't so much electronic versus manual, it's, does this fit with our historic,
The
you know,
character, right.
character and
Right.
ambiance here?
Right.
But read it, because other historic cities have done this. It was to go to planning commission for review this past Wednesday, but it didn't get on their agenda, so, that,
Okay, we're gonna roll it
so
over and
we
we'll
just
talk
have to
about it
roll
later.
it over,
Okay.
yeah.
Honestly, I'm
Very
not
good.
not sure where this is a planning commission item.
I don't think it actually is. I think, you know.
It's not a zoning
But
issue.
bottom
Yeah,
line is,
yeah.
I think it's important. I think it falls in line with all the
Agreed.
things we've heard from our
Yeah.
constituents
I
about.
mean, we're in agreement with you down at this end at least.
Okay, okay.
We just want to
Should
vet
go
it
to
out.
Okay.
Historic Commission though?
Okay.
Is that another place it should
That's
go
why I
to?
want to read Chris's memo
Okay.
to understand it fully.
Gotcha.
Excuse me.
Okay, last item is discuss Pledge of Allegiance before council meetings.
And this is also my item. I recently attended the Beverly Hills council meeting. At the very start of the meeting, they have a flag right behind them. They all stood and recited the pledge. It's something I do all the time personally, as a Mason and in numbers of other organizations that I belong to. It is at the discretion of our community, but I think it's something that a historic community like Franklin Village with Ben Franklin looking over our shoulder and a flag right there, we should, as a council, do. And so I would like to propose that we recite the Pledge of Allegiance at the start of our council meetings.
I appreciate that. For a number of reasons, I'm not in favor of this.
Okay, well, I'm putting it forth for, I make a motion that we adopt the reading of the Pledge of Allegiance before our council meetings.
I'll second it to get this out here for discussion, because I'd like to get everyone's thoughts. Clearly Mark's not in favor of it. Does anyone else have opinions? If this is something that now is a motion on the table that we'll have to address. But what are I guess what are the pros and cons of it? Is it?
So reason
Tell me
one,
the cons.
so, you know, and certainly in my lifetime, I've said the pledge countless times, right? You know, the Pledge of Allegiance, it's not historic, it's written in the 50s. And words were added to it over time, right? And not all of our residents are citizens of this country. Not all of our residents believe in God. So in terms of inclusivity, you know, we are excluding people who may be in this room, may be on the camera, that are residents of our village, have every right to be here, living here, that we're excluding from that. They're not all believe in God, they're not all residents. And we're pledging to a flag. So it's just not necessary. So those are my cons. David, I don't know if you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I share the same sentiment as, I have hesitations for the exact reasons that you raised. And I was trying to rack my brain with, you know, what are the happy compromises within this, and, you know, organizing, voluntarily doing it beforehand, I think gives it to the individuals on whether or not they want to participate rather than mandating it through procedure. So again, I don't know outside of Mike, I understand that you individually want to do, not individually, I don't want to say that because there are others that may want to. I do have concerns about whether we're creating some projection to certain residents that are negative or less inclusive.
So when, you know, as I look into our charter and things, all this was happening in the 50s, which is about as patriotic USA times it was with communism and capitalism and all that. Our forebears, they chose not to do that. So in 70-some years, they've chosen not to add it, and that's exactly when all that was changed. So, well, obviously I'm a patriot, I'm a good American, I'm born here in Detroit, right? But, you know, when this happens in schools and people sit down, in a sense it's ostracizing them, and they make them feel bad. So we want to be as open and welcoming to everybody in here, and I have no idea the faiths or the nationalities of people who walk in this room. I don't.
I personally don't see what is non-inclusive in reciting the pledge. It's like standing up in the 7th inning of a baseball game. Most people do it. I don't know how much it means to people today. I personally find it comforting, and that I'm not in any way suggesting that it is exclusionary. If you don't believe in God, that's your right. But
I'll explain, Michael.
in a government-
You ask about how you don't explain. I'll explain how it's exclusionary. Because imagine we had a situation where every single time, 7 o'clock, room full of people in here, and we had a pretty good size today. Everyone stands up, does the pledge, and there's people who are not residents. We're asking them or making them sit down to, you know, pledge to a flag that is not necessarily their flag. They may not be residents here, and they may not be believers in God.
I'm not asking the audience to stand. I think we as council members. That's what I've seen in other village, and Peter can speak to this because he represents other communities. Are we in the minority by not reciting the pledge?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we represent municipalities, and the ones that we currently represent all pledge allegiance to the flag before the start of their meeting now. We represent other quasi-governmental units that do not, but those aren't local municipalities.
And all the local municipalities that you represent
Correct.
say the pledge?
Yes, I've been to each meeting where we start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
Everyone in the room.
I don't,
They ask everyone in the room too. They say we're gonna take a moment. When I go to meetings, they say we're gonna say the pledge. They don't make people in the crowd
right,
stand up.
right,
No.
right.
The
I'm not
council members
suggesting
do, and people in the crowd do.
Yes.
But it's not like, hey, you're not standing, you know.
Right. No, no one's ostracized or anything like that.
Look, I'm not a citizen, but I stand for it. I don't necessarily.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I'm missing the whole inclusion, citizenship, religion piece of it. The word God is in there, but it doesn't say who's God, it's just a God, so it would really only offend atheists.
Right.
And then the whole inclusion, exclusion, I never bought that, but the whole, if you know, saying stand up and people don't stand up, I get that, but I'm not following inclusion, exclusion, when I know the words to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I don't hear inclusion, exclusion in there. It's just kind of being an allegiance to the country, whether you're a citizen or not. You are living here and abiding by our laws and benefiting by our rules, you would hopefully say allegiance to the country. But, I'm not seeing the whole exclusion piece.
I find it really interesting that Mark said, what Mark said is that all the other people who stood here in our spot for however many years, 1850, you know, has not said the Pledge of Allegiance and did not feel it was necessary. And
It's interesting.
that's very interesting, and I,
Right.
Yeah, that's.
You-
okay, so since
Right.
what, right, so you're right, that's a good point.
We don't really know.
That's a good
I
point.
I think it's a glaring omission, and it struck me, because I've been sitting here for years. And it struck me when I went to another community, and it was an absolute neat, you know, obvious thing, and I thought, well, God, why?
This is the first place that it was never done.
So I think, for me, it is not a message to exclude, but I'm a little concerned about that concept, that we're also worried about. We live in America, we should be proud. I have a flag in front of my property, many of us do. It doesn't designate that you are more or less patriotic, we're Americans. And for me, right now, it's even more important.
Well, I think,
That's-
again, I go back and forth because I'm not really an extreme on one side or the other. I'm trying to weigh everything.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think anybody's trying to say that this proposal is you trying to purposely exclude people. I think Mark's bringing a perspective of if you are somebody who, when you hear the words, one nation under God, right? I get your point about the exclusion of atheists, right? A limited population. I think as us on council, in it being targeted towards our Pledge of Allegiance, it goes into the sense of we are a government, right? That feeds up to the larger government. And so that is your Pledge of Allegiance, a pledge of duty. We capture that with an oath, right? This is all the internal dialogue in my head. So,
You have a very rich conversation with
I
yourself.
constantly imagine being my family.
We have a flag right here.
I'm scared of that.
It's obvious. And it seems disrespectful that we have our back to our flag and don't even pay it any heed at all. That's all. So why don't we just vote on this? If you're not comfortable with it, that's fine. I think majority rules and everything, and I'm not trying to make this into a controversy. It's my personal wish that we do it. I'm not gonna be desecrated if my council doesn't support me. But I think it's something we should do, and so I've made the motion. It's, I think, seconded.
Second, yeah.
So why don't we just vote?
I just wanted to comment, I'm comfortable not doing it. I think there's pluses and minuses in What'd you say, Mike?
Nothing.
So, Mike, let me ask
Let's
this
cut the
question.
baloney here, buddy.
Ooh, that was
Just-
not necessary.
Just
If you're not comfortable, then, you know, fine, I just think
Can I
it's.
not make a point without it?
Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize, I apologize.
Let's vote. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Trustee Goldberg,
Yes.
trustee Hanky,
No.
trustee Hansen,
Yeah, let me think about it. I'm really torn.
Are we ready to?
Are we allowed to
That's
do
what we were
that?
doing.
No.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying, if it, because I'm struggling with it too, I just
You
don't
wanna
know.
roll it over till next month and not vote?
We called for a
No.
vote, we started voting.
We started voting. I'll say yes.
President Lamont,
No.
I already said no.
trustee Solly,
I'm in your shoes. And what's the vote right now?
It's even. I mean, if you vote no, it doesn't have to go away forever.
Right, it doesn't go away
We
forever.
can
We do it
still
another
revisit
time.
it, but if you say yes, then it's gonna
Yeah.
move forward, so.
Then I'll vote no for now. Well, no, I vote no.
trustee Salsa,
Yes.
So it's 4-3 no, correct?
Motion failed.
Okay.
All right, what's next?
So the next is adjourn the meeting.
Yeah,
All
so-
right. I'm voting no against adjourning.
You can stay here all night, Mike.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I have a question, and I may have missed this, because this is my first time
Oh, absolutely.
coming to a meeting, so please forgive me. I have an issue, and I think there's a gentleman in the back that also has the same issue. I know,
Can you identify yourself, sir, your name and where you live, please?
I'm sorry, Barry Schatzman, 31800 Nottingham. I'm on the corner of Nottingham and Franklin Park Drive. I live across the street from somebody that is now, I'm sure everybody's aware, an attorney's been hired, you've gotten papers. I live across the street from Mitch Album, who has purchased 3 homes, 2 on either side of them, with the intention of bringing Haitian refugees to these homes. One, I want to know, what is the council's stance on it? What do you, if anything, plan to do about it? 2, can we have a public meeting about it? Because I know in my neighbors that I do talk to, there's 20 to 30 of them that want this issue to get talked about.
Can I give you an update?
Yes,
What we've
please.
been doing?
Please.
Roger and I have both been involved. We've both talked to Mitch. He tells us it is not his intention to use those homes for residents. It would be illegal doing that. We had a couple other questions that I haven't had answered yet. He did offer to meet with the neighbors and talk directly to them. Most of them said,
Can we
no,
set
I don't
that
want to
up?
do it.
Yeah, can we set that up in a
Right.
formal,
So, it is-
public type of manner?
So from my perspective, I'll take him at his word, and we'll.
I can tell you
keep
that's
what-
not the case, because I've seen,
Well, then we need to document that and go after it, but,
yeah, so
from what
that's I'm
I've been
saying.
told,
Can we set this up as you said, a town hall meeting?
well,
or
I don't know that we need to go
something
that
like
far, but we will stay involved and.
Well, I'd like to have the rest of the 30 so families that are
Bill,
directly involved.
Tell them about what you set up to begin with.
Yeah, because initially it was, let's all sit down and talk, Mitch was willing to do that. I went back to there were only 3 or 4 people that had written letters. I went back to him and said, he wants to meet. They all said, no, thank you. So
Well, we
you
wrote
gotta
a
have
letter,
a
but
two,
We haven't received any updates.
I didn't write a letter.
I did.
Oh,
I mean, I wrote a letter.
So you
to
weren't
guys.
among the people that were,
I wrote a letter to you guys. My understanding is an attorney's been hired. I saw the letter from the attorney to the council asking for detailed information.
I don't recall seeing your letter.
What is your name, sir?
Barry Schatzman.
Yeah, you wrote a letter.
Yeah.
But there's an attorney that wrote a letter, asking for all emails, all pertinent information
Aware of that.
regarding the,
Right.
right. But I don't know where all this stands,
So you would like to meet with Mitch if.
I would like to have a public town hall, forum, whatever you want to call it, so that my understanding is there's about 30 of us involved that have direct impact.
help me
Now,
out.
the reason that some of us are upset is one house is, from our understanding, is supposed to be college-age adult people, and one is for little children. One of the neighbors saw half a dozen college-age men walking around at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Problem.
Another one of
No
his,
question.
of Mitch's articles says that he's got 60 refugees and 40 caretakers. I don't know what they're, I don't know, nobody knows his intention. We've had neighbors go up to Mitch and say, hello, very friendly. We have a large family, and then gets very abrupt and leaves. Well, unless he's planning on adopting them, and not to be
Right.
disrespectful, they look different.
Right.
They're not,
I-
okay, if you want, pardon? Well, of course, but my point is, they're not family. This is single-family residential community. If it's a group home, my understanding is, you can have 6 residents in a group home.
And it has to be licensed, no question. And
Okay.
again, we've
Yeah.
covered that. He said,
So again,
Give us a-
we have a mass amount of questions,
okay,
and he is not forthcoming with any
yeah,
response.
right.
I think it needs to be in a public,
What would a public forum do for this?
I think it would just answer a lot of questions. He is not answering
So
questions.
let's back up. With regard to the 2 houses he bought, he's not obligated to answer any questions to us unless he seeks to do something or we see him doing something that was in violation of an ordinance. So we don't have the
Okay.
right to ask any residents, hey, what are you doing with that house you bought? If you bought a house, you wouldn't want us knocking on your door and saying, what are you doing with your house? So with regard to those 2 other houses, until he seeks to do something, and if he's gonna do something, we would assume and hope that he would do it as a permitted action, as opposed to an unpermitted action. So there's nothing we can do with those houses until that comes to fruition. With
So you're
regard,
saying we can't do anything, or you're not willing to do anything
Willing-
until these
well, we've
residents
asked,
move in?
we asked him to meet, and supposedly the
Yeah, the
residents didn't wanna meet.
right.
Mitch
Oh,
wouldn't
that's not
meet.
true. All the residents want to meet.
Well, I'll tell you 3 or 4 that I talked to that said, no, thank you.
I can
We
tell
got a
you,
time
the-
and a date
I can
set
tell
up.
you the
At the
20
beginning of
I
this
talked
meeting-
to are
at the beginning
dying
of
to
this
meet
meeting,
with them.
4 of your neighbors were here. They didn't say a word. One stood up on behalf of the other ones and
You
said,
know, both Robert and I,
we appreciate that you guys are looking into it. Please keep us informed,
Right.
which is what we're gonna do. Now, anything that's going on in his current residence that could be considered an ordinance violation, that obviously would be something that could be investigated. The question is whether or not he's using his accessory building for single-family purposes. We'll have to take a look at the accessory building ordinance. I do not believe it prohibits you from using it for residential purposes.
For your family.
Correct. So the question is whether it's family or not, and then I think the next
you get
question
into
is our
familial
ordinance
status.
even legal to allow somebody to differentiate from what they're using their property for based on familial status? Because the last time I checked Title IX, that might not be legal.
Right.
I have not done extensive research,
Right.
but they don't have to be one single family blood DNA unit.
To be considered
Consider
a
it
single family.
single family.
Right.
Correct.
so you can be somebody from another country that's brought in?
We've researched a little bit, and there could be a cluster of priests that are not related with nuns that could be considered single-family dwelling.
So what is considered not single-family then?
We haven't done extensive research, but I think
Hmm.
President Lamont said where you have
This should
a
Multifamily.
youth, multifamily or youth home, and it needs to be licensed and foster care, that would not be considered.
The bottom line is, we don't know anything. We've asked specifically.
Right.
He does not offer up anything
That's correct.
specific.
That-
There
that's what
was
we've
an
got.
opportunity for certain neighbors to meet with him directly. They chose not to. So to invite a public forum, I'm not sure if that would.
Well, I don't know.
That might not look good for anybody. And right
He's
now,
got no
we will
obligation.
keep the community posted if there's something that we need to keep the community posted about. I mean, there are a lot of big homes in this community that could be housing any number of different families. We would never know that. And I'm not sure there was anything that we could do to control that. If it's a designated group home, there has to be a permit process. That is not apparently what is planned. We don't know.
That's
So-
all I'm asking,
so we-
is nobody knows.
We understand your concern, and
We're looking into it.
When
We're looking
somebody
into
went
it.
up to one of the homes, they said this is a group home owned by Mitchell. So,
if you see activity that is concerning at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Call the police.
you should call the police. In any event.
my neighbor should have done that, but
To
obviously most
determine
of
what
us are
that
not
is.
up at 2 in the morning
Yeah.
and looking to see and
But if I'm
driving
coming in from
around
the airport at
3
2 o'clock in the
houses.
morning, I don't expect that it would cause a ruckus. But if there's 20 people outside, that's a different situation. So, but we don't know any of
Okay,
that.
so my jest of, you don't think the council has the ability to do anything because you don't know?
Not until we know something. Not until
If-
there's
if-
some
how do you-
violation.
Right, I
The
mean,
o-
that's, I
He's
guess-
purchased a couple of homes. When
Okay.
Dan Gilbert bought the houses around him, he demolished them,
100%,
created
I
St.
get it.
Charles Street as his personal kingdom. If Mitch does the same thing, he has every right to do that.
He does.
But thus far, that hasn't been discussed, or there'd be a demolition permit before us. You know, we don't have, there's nothing that we can say. So it puts us all in sort of an
Our
awkward.
ordinance doesn't allow commercial activities in the residential district, so if anything he was doing moved into the realm of commercial
Or licensed.
or
Well,
licensed
but
or anything
if
like that,
he
that's
has-
one thing.
If he has caregivers, is that considered commercial?
That would become, well, no, but that would, again,
Are these people paying to be there, or are they just guests of his? That's
Right.
what this.
I would assume a caregiver is being paid to be there.
no.
Commercial,
He's
like,
talking about the
earning money.
individual
The
residents.
people living.
Bill.
If there was somebody there,
Bill, I,
I think our ordinance is very clear on a house in Franklin, can only be occupied by a family. I asked him the specific question, are you putting kids in those houses? He said, no, I don't intend to do that. Right now, I'm taking him at his word. I've talked to a few of the neighbors, said, if you see something different, let us know, and we'll follow up on it. That's where it is right now, that's where I want to leave it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's
okay?
just rumors. We've
Right.
been hearing these rumors.
Right.
And the village has been aware that there's rumors, but until something specific transpires,
Right.
we have nothing. We can't,
Right.
there's nothing we can say.
Yep,
And if he's lying to us, then we'll deal with that.
different
But
issue, yeah,
right now, we can't prove that.
right.
okay.
So,
But the only way to,
but thank you
you have,
for,
you have to have all these people move in and then say,
Well-
okay, he's lying to us. And then you have to go through that whole process of evicting them, or whatever the
Well,
process is.
right.
Whatever it is.
we've seen how that goes. We've had a recent experience like that, so
Okay.
nobody
wrap it up.
wants.
I sincerely
he's-
think he wants to do
he's
the
an
right
honorable
thing.
person.
Maybe he got off on the, wasn't knowledgeable, maybe he's pulling this,
Oh, I think
you know,
he's got this orphanage in Haiti. I think
Right.
he's very knowledgeable. I don't think there's anybody that's
And that's very
doubting that.
noble. He does very nice,
Yeah, I don't think
noble,
anybody,
charitable
there is
things.
nobody that's
So-
doubting
Right.
his humanitarian effort.
absolutely.
Nobody's doubting that whatsoever.
philanthropic.
And he
3 minutes
does
are up.
have kids that stay with him in his home. He said
Yeah.
that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But if you're gonna bring
Right, if you're
30
gonna put
kids
6
or-
kids in the house next door with a third
30
kid,
caregivers or
right,
whatever,
that's
it-
not allowed.
it
Correct.
becomes a commercial setting where we have a whole different gamut.
Right.
You'll take mine.
Okay.
Okay.
So you guys aren't doing, I got it.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me.
Okay.
Thank
Yep.
you. Motion to adjourn?
I think we already had that.
Oh.
didn't we?
Yeah, but I said I was
To adjourn it
opposed.
again?
So we're doing a
There
marathon.
you go.
I was just kidding.